Chapter 1906. Go. Xiao Hua's figure quickly retreated. He pointed his finger, and the suppressing cloud seal flew over. Another loud pong sound rang out. The suppressing cloud seal was hit by the inner core, and it continuously flipped a few times in midair. It was entangled by lightning and fell to the ground. Damn it! How can it be so powerful? Xiao Hua was greatly shocked. He hurriedly opened his mouth, and that scarlet spirit fire flew out. Xiao Hua did not hesitate and pointed his hand. More than half of his magic power gushed out, and that scarlet flame rushed towards the thunder beast's inner core. As soon as the spiritual fire appeared, the entire cave was filled with a crimson brilliance. Although the scorching heat did not change, the thunder beast could clearly sense the difference in the spiritual fire and immediately became anxious. Seeing the spiritual fire fly towards its Nidan, the male thunder beast did not dare to be negligent. A thumb-sized thunderbolt was produced from its Nidan and rushed into the long and thin crimson flame. See, the lightning was actually melted by the scarlet flame. Roar! The male lightning beast turned pale with fright. How could it dare to let its inner core touch this scarlet flame? It hurriedly opened its mouth, wanting to suck back the core. But right at this moment, a sorrowful cry rang out. The female lightning beast that had just fallen to the ground was rolling around on the white bones, and beneath its body, dirty blood flowed all over the ground. Good. Seeing this, Xiao Hua did not care about morality and hurriedly pointed his finger at the spirit fire. It continued to fly towards the male lightning beast, while he himself flew in front of Xue Xue. Quickly go. Xiao Hua waved his hand and said, Eldest senior brother and senior sister-in-law are injured and cannot fly. Xue Xue did not care about anything and hurriedly said, Let me. Xiao Hua walked in front of eldest senior brother and senior sister-in-law and hurriedly said, Excuse me, senior sister-in-law? As he said, he stretched out his hand and grabbed a person's arm with one hand. He turned around and was about to fly out, but at this moment, he heard an extremely shrill roar in the entire cave house. Then, the cave house that was originally annihilated by the scarlet spiritual fire was covered with a thick layer of blood color. Xiao Hua hurriedly turned his head and saw the male lightning beast standing in the center of the cave. It seemed to not care about the spirit fire flying towards it. The blood all over its body flew out and fell around the cave. A layer of blood light also rose around the cave and quickly wrapped around the entire cave. Blood seal. A thought immediately appeared in Xiao Hua's mind. This blood-colored seal was the innate ability of certain spiritual beasts of the 5th rank and above. At the most critical moment, the spiritual beast's life and blood essence would be sacrificed to form an extremely powerful restriction around its body. This restriction only had the effect of sealing and suppressing, so it was called a seal. However, any living creature within the blood-colored seal, unless their cultivation was 2 ranks higher than the spiritual beast, would not be able to break the seal. Xiao Hua understood the meaning of the blood-colored seal, and his expression immediately changed. Although he could take the risk and rush to the entrance of the cave, he only had Xiangyang and Yin Qinglian. Xue Xue was not in his hands. How could he abandon Xue Xue? Junior brother. Xiangyang glanced at Yin Qinglian and tenderness appeared in his eyes. Yin Qinglian immediately understood Xiangyang's meaning and stuck the escape talisman on Xiao Hua's body. Without waiting for Xiao Hua to speak, Xiangyang placed his hand on his forehead. Hurry up and activate the escape talisman. Otherwise, even if you save me from here, I will definitely die from shaking my head. Eldest senior brother, Xiao Hua was greatly sorrowful, but seeing the determination in Xiangyang's eyes and Yin Qinglian's hand holding Xiangyang's, he did not dare to delay in the slightest. He loosened his hand and Xiangyang and Yin Qinglian both fell to the ground. Let's go. Xiao Hua did not hesitate and pulled Xue Xue who was beside him. Xue Xue saw Yin Qinglian take out the escape talisman and understood long ago. She immediately took out her own escape talisman. At this moment, hearing Xiao Hua's command, she immediately activated her magic power and the two of them immediately concealed themselves and disappeared from the cave. Xiao Hua activated the escape talisman and immediately felt his vision darken. But in an instant, That blackness turned into a blood-red color that filled the sky. At the same time, a torrent-like oppressive feeling chased after Xiaohua from behind. Xiaohua understood that this was a blood-red seal that was sealing off the space. If he was caught by this blood-red color that filled the sky, then he would be sealed inside just like Xiangyang. Of course, this was only for an instant. As if he was forcefully pushed out of the door by someone else, Xiaohua's eyes lit up and his entire body stopped in midair. And about a foot behind him was precisely the blood-red seal. Only feeling that his palm was wet, Xiaohua turned his head to look. Shue's face was similarly devoid of color. Like an injured little bird, she pulled on Xiaohua's arm, lovely and moving. Shue. Xiaohua said warmly, "We are fine." Xiaohua. Shue murmured and recklessly rushed into Xiaohua's embrace. She desperately hugged Xiaohua and used all her strength as if she wanted to pull Xiaohua into her body. After the time it took to smoke a cigarette, Shue lifted her small face from Xiaohua's embrace. At this time, her face was somewhat pale, and there were many traces of tears on her face. She asked, "Xiaohua, where did you go?" "AI, it's a long story." Xiaohua thought for a moment and said, "I was killed by that bastard Xiang Min and was teleported to another array. As soon as I escaped danger, I immediately found the aura of the sun-moon corona and chased after it." "AI, so that's how it is." Shue took out the sun-moon corona from her embrace and handed it to Xiaohua. She said mournfully, "It seems this concubine shouldn't have taken the sun-moon corona away. Otherwise, it wouldn't have harmed the lives of eldest senior brother and eldest senior sister-in-law." Xiaohua understood Shue's thoughts. He knew that if he didn't come, Shue would protect Xiangyang and Yin Qinglian. Although the female lightning beast wanted their lives, with the male lightning beast by their side, the two of them might not necessarily be in danger. Shue, if you say so, then this husband, won't he feel even more guilty? Xiaohua shook his head. "You've already done your best. Ancestor Zhen and the others have already died in the hands of the lightning beast. It's already not easy for eldest senior brother and eldest senior sister-in-law to be protected by you until now. AI, sooner or later they will become the lightning beast's food." Shue was sad and lowered her head. "Perhaps. What do we do now?" Shue took a deep breath and asked, "What is this blood-red thing? The lightning beast can't come out?" "This is called the blood-red seal." Xiaohua said, "I'm afraid the male lightning beast is already dead. The female lightning beast is giving birth. I don't know what the result is. AI, for its own child, the male lightning beast, is also in trouble." Shue didn't ask why Xiaohua knew about the blood-red seal. She stared at the seal for a long time and sighed. Then this lowly concubine and Xiaohua should leave. Xiaohua, you've already built your foundation? Only now did Shue notice that Xiaohua had already built his foundation. She couldn't help but be surprised. This lowly concubine already knew that Xiaohua would definitely build his foundation. "We just arrived at the Flame Forest Swamp, and this trip has already produced results." "Haha," Xiaohua forced a smile and said, "It's just gathering, there's no need to talk about it." Then, he looked at the seal and scanned it with his divine sense for a long time, then said, "I'm afraid we can't leave now." "What?" Shue was anxious. "When the female lightning beast breaks the seal and comes out, won't we die without a burial place?" Xiaohua shook his head and said, "The situation was urgent just now. It was simply a matter of life and death, so I didn't have time to think carefully. Just as I left the cave and relaxed, I felt that we didn't have to run away just now." Why?" Shue stared blankly and asked curiously, "The male lightning beast has already died, and the female lightning beast has already given birth. It simply doesn't have the power to fight back. I only need to kill the female lightning beast, and eldest senior brother and eldest senior sister-in-law won't die. Even now, eldest senior brother and eldest senior sister-in-law might not necessarily die," Xiaohua said with some regret. Shue thought for a moment and said with a smile, "This lowly concubine understands, but you don't seem to have any confidence in breaking this blood seal, right?" Xiaohua nodded sadly and said, "With my cultivation, I simply can't break it. You didn't think of it, but eldest senior brother probably thought of it. Shue Shue smiled sadly. Eldest senior brother doesn't want you to accompany him in the seal for the rest of your life. Xiaohua raised his head and stared straight at the seal. He shook his head and said, Eldest senior brother simply doesn't know. He simply didn't think of it. He simply doesn't know anything. He just didn't want to drag me down, so he threatened me with death. So benevolent and righteous, worthy of being Xiaohua's eldest senior brother. Shue Shue said very virtuously. Xiaohua is truly fortunate to have such an eldest senior brother. That's right, Xiaohua said with a smile. So, I can't leave. I have to think of a way to break the seal here. Even if eldest senior brother and eldest senior sister-in-law died, I still have to bring their bodies back to the Imperial Thunder Sect, to the myriad Thunder Valley. Okay. Shue Shue also nodded resolutely. Moreover, your husband's flying sword, cloud-suppressing seal, and that little bit of spiritual fire. Because I fled too hurriedly, they were all left behind in the seal. I'm afraid that your husband can't easily leave. Xiaohua said again. Shue Shue pondered for a moment and nodded. That's right. That spiritual fire is so powerful that even 6th-grade spirit beasts are afraid of it. Of course it can't be left here. Seeing that Shue Shue didn't ask about the origins of his flying sword and spiritual fire, Xiaohua didn't explain. After letting Shue Shue take some medicinal pills to adjust her breathing, Xiaohua set up a rabbit formation near the seal. He and Shue Shue hid inside it, and then carefully thought about how to break the seal. Now Xiaohua already understood that his memories of the Chao Wu's soul essence, the 5 spirits, and the blood seal all came from the flame soul essence. After the Chao Wu's soul essence was absorbed by the Phoenix Dharma body, its memories were also given to Xiaohua. This blood seal might be relying on the Chao Wu's soul essence. Of course, the memories of these spirit beasts and vicious beasts weren't Xiaohua's own. Only when he encountered a question could he find the answer. If he directly looked for the question, he still couldn't find the answer. The blood seal was exactly what Xiaohua knew. It was the last method that some extremely powerful innate spirit beasts used to perish together. It was the most troublesome. If one wanted to break it, one must be 2 ranks higher than a high-grade spirit beast. In other words, only 8th-grade spirit beasts could break it. This was also the strength required to break it from inside. 8th-grade spirit beasts, that was the cultivation of early nascent soul stage. Only nascent soul stage cultivators of the Imperial Thunder Sect could possibly break this seal. If they were confident, they would have to be in the middle or late nascent soul stage. -8. Chapter 1907. Xiaohua thought for a long time, but he had no clue. He thought of going back to the Imperial Thunder Sect to ask for help. But obviously, Xiangyang and Yin Qinglian were only Foundation Establishment middle stage cultivators. In the myriad Thunder Valley, they were considered the mainstay, but in the Imperial Thunder Sect, they were nothing. Seeing how Xiaohua killed 2 Foundation Establishment initial stage cultivators in the Imperial Thunder Sect without attracting any attention, Xiaohua knew that it might not be useful if he went back to ask for help. Moreover, the myriad Thunder Valley was helpless because there were no nascent soul stage cultivators on good terms. Or, ask Jinqing, Gantian, Senior Sun Ming. Xiaohua thought for a while and shook his head. These 3 seniors are only golden core stage cultivators. It is not realistic to ask them to trouble nascent soul stage cultivators, or directly ask Thunder Mingzhenren. Although Xiaohua had the sect master token in his hand, he did not dare to ask the Imperial Thunder Sect Master. The best he could think of was Thunder Mingzhenren. That is a nascent soul stage cultivator. Xiaohua smiled bitterly. He was not so naive as to ask Thunder Mingzhenren for help after meeting him twice and having a good impression of him. Yes, there is still Zhenyi. Xiaohua suddenly thought of Zhenyi who died in the cave. Zhenyi is a golden core stage cultivator and also an alchemist of the Thunder Palace. He will definitely be valued by Thunder Mingzhenren. There is no need to go through so much trouble. How can Thunder Mingzhenren not come after knowing that there are lightning beasts here? Xiaohua immediately stood up. But just as he stood up, he hesitated. Yes, Thunder Mingzhenren opened the seal and saved Xiangyang and Yin Qinglian, But what about his spiritual fire? What about his flying sword? Wouldn't it fall into Thunder Mengzhenren's eyes? Moreover, that is the inner core of a lightning beast. What if Thunder Mengzhenren has some thoughts that he does not want others to know? Shui, Xiangyang, Yin Qinglian and himself, are we all going to... Xiaohua did not dare to continue thinking. Although he really wanted to have a good impression of Lei Meng Daoist, but after all, he had never seen Lei Meng Daoist twice. He did not dare to take the risk. Because of the inner cores of the two lightning beasts in the seal, Xiaohua did not dare to ask others to help him open the seal. I can only think of a way. Xiaohua smiled bitterly. He looked at Shui, who had a serene expression. As long as she was by his side, she would always feel safe. He stood up and walked out of the formation. The cave abode in front of Xiaohua was still wrapped in blood. It was quiet, like a cocoon. Xiaohua walked to the front and released his Buddhist consciousness and divine sense. They could not enter, and he could not sense the dream slayer, spiritual fire, and other things. Soon after, Xiaohua took out the devil spear tip and stabbed it with all his might. The devil spear tip simply couldn't leave any traces. After that, he tried all kinds of magic treasures, such as the leaf sun fan and the aqua pearl. Even Xiaohua released his phoenix celestial body, but the sharp claws were unable to do anything. How is it, husband? Shui also walked out of the formation and asked with concern, Sigh, it still doesn't work. Xiaohua sighed. Don't worry, husband. We'll stay here with eldest senior brother. It doesn't matter if it's a day, a year, or even 10 years. You just have to slowly think about it. If you can easily break the blood seal of a 6th grade spiritual beast, wouldn't that be amazing? Shui consoled. I know. Xiaohua nodded. He looked around and asked, That's right. How did you all come here? Where's the fire ape? Where's Xiang Min and the others? Hee, husband finally asked. Shui said with a smile. Soon after, she recounted what happened after Xiaohua disappeared. As it turned out, after Xiaohua was teleported, the 5 elements soul detention formation collapsed. The lightning beast and fire ape escaped from the valley. The 7 golden core cultivators brought their disciples and chased after them. Unexpectedly, just as they reached the mountain range, the fire ape and lightning beast separated and fled in different directions. Xiang Min, Zhang Chengguang, and Sun Shankong naturally led their disciples to chase after the fire ape. Zhenyi, Lu Mingsheng, Jiang Zhucheng, and Feng Shuqing naturally chased after the lightning beast. However, the lightning beast's flying speed was extremely fast. Zhenyi and the other 3 golden core cultivators were naturally able to catch up to it. The Imperial Thunder sect was known for their lightning evasion. Although Xiang Yang's lightning evasion was not good, he was still better than the other 2 Foundation Establishment middle stage disciples from Xuanyan School. Furthermore, Feng Jieyu's flying technique was also extraordinary. Thus, they were able to chase after the lightning beast for so long. The lightning beast was already injured, so they were able to catch up to it. Moreover, they were able to kill it several times. Unfortunately, the lightning beast used its inner core to break through and escape. When they finally reached the lightning beast's immortal's cave, everyone was delighted. They thought that the lightning beast was at the end of its road and would not be able to resist. However, what welcomed them was actually another female lightning beast. Although this female lightning beast was pregnant, its emotions were explosive and it was very cunning. As soon as it saw them, it blocked the entrance of the immortal's cave and killed Feng Shuqing by surprise. Then, the 2 lightning beasts joined forces. They were equivalent to 2 middle-stage golden core cultivators. How could Zhenyi, Lu Mingsheng, and Jiang Zhucheng be a match for them? However, after the female lightning beast swallowed Feng Jieyu's brain matter, it wanted to attack Shui again, but it was blocked by the male lightning beast. The female lightning beast then wanted to attack Xiang Yang and Yin Qinglian, but it was blocked by Shui. As a result, the male lightning beast only managed to injure the 2 of them, which also prevented the female lightning beast from attacking any further. As a result, for the next few days, it was all thanks to Shui's protection that Xiang Yang and Yin Qinglian's lives were saved. Today, however, the female lightning beast went berserk again, wanting to swallow Xiang Yang and Yin Qinglian's brains. That was why Xiaohua encountered it. Xiaohua was naturally somewhat puzzled. He did not know why the male lightning beast wanted to protect Xue Xue. Perhaps it was because of the true blood in Xue Xue's body? However, Xue Xue did not mention it, so Xiaohua could not ask. After all, cultivators had their own secrets, and many of them could not be told to others. Alas, Martial Uncle Zhen, I bet you didn't expect there to be two lightning beasts. Xiaohua sighed. Sometimes, it's better to be a little less greedy. That's true, but if it's related to lifespan, no one can be calm. Xue Xue shook her head and said, Alas, Xiaohua sighed and returned to the formation. After thinking for a moment, he waved his hand and took out the method to control the spiritual fire. Previously, he felt that this thing was really obscure, and because he had to learn new words, he only looked at a little bit. Only now did he know that this fire art was so powerful. He was afraid that it would be of great use in the future. Moreover, it was the most powerful method he currently had. In addition, the spiritual fire was also left in the seal, so he could tamper with the spiritual fire. Unknowingly, several days passed. On this day, just as Xue Xue was about to leave the formation, Xiaohua, who had been frowning and closed his eyes all this time, suddenly stood up from the ground with a whoosh. He laughed loudly and said, The heavens have not forsaken me. This young master can use this method. Darling Xiao. Xue Xue also stopped in her tracks. She turned her head back to look in surprise. You really have a way? Don't be impatient. Don't be impatient. Although Xiaohua's eyes were somewhat apprehensive, his footsteps were firm. -8. Chapter 1908. Outside the seal, Xiaohua closed his eyes and thought for a moment. He chose a place to sit cross-legged. With a wave of his hand, a shabby oil lamp was taken out from the space. Then, with a tap of his hand, a drop of oil flew out from the oil lamp. Xiaohua put away the oil lamp and waved his hand. The Samadhi true fire was created and burned the oil lamp. Unfortunately, the oil lamp did not change in the slightest under the Samadhi true fire. There was no sign of it being ignited. Hiss! Xiaohua took a deep breath. His face became more and more complicated. Then, he opened his mouth and spat out the icicle jus flame, but it still could not ignite the oil lamp. What should I do? Xiaohua frowned. But then, his eyes lit up. He simply absorbed the icicle jus flame into his body. He closed his eyes and cast a spell on the oil lamp. Then, he released his Buddhist sense. Xiaohua's Buddhist sense passed through the lamp oil and slowly used a secret technique of the divine fire art. After the time it took to light the lamp, a smile suddenly appeared on Xiaohua's face. Soon after, the lamp oil floated to the blood-colored seal and lay flat on top of it. Xiaohua was very relaxed. He turned his head and said with a smile, Eldest brother is saved. How? Xue Xue could not help but ask. I can use a secret technique to contact the spiritual fire left in the seal. Right now, I'm controlling the spiritual fire to burn the seal. If it can burn it, the seal can be broken. Your spiritual fire is so powerful? Xue Xue was dumbfounded. Even the blood-colored seal can be broken. Doesn't that mean it can break all the formations in the world? Xiaohua smiled bitterly. Wife, you're wrong. The Tao of formations is ever-changing. How can a cluster of spiritual fire be able to break it? Even if it's a seal, one must look at its attribute and see its flaws. If there are no changes after it is burned, it should be broken. If it causes other changes to the seal, of course, it can't be broken. I'm just trying to see if it has any effect, or if it will cause other changes. So it's like that. Xue Xue's tone seemed to be somewhat disappointed. She felt that Xiaohua was omnipotent. You should cultivate. This spirit fire is only a weak connection. I don't know what's going on inside. Moreover, I'm afraid that breaking this blood-colored seal isn't something that can be completed in a short period of time. After the time it took to eat a meal, Xiaohua raised his eyes to look at Xue Xue, who had been staring at him the entire time, and said, Okay. Xue Xue could be considered to be obedient to Xiaohua's words. She stood up and walked out of the formation. Don't go too far. If there's anything, hurry up and send me a messaging talisman. Xiaohua still didn't forget to warn him. This sentence was very ordinary, but it was also very warm. It was like the wife of a mortal family going out, and the husband casually exhorted her. Shue's heart naturally warmed when she heard this. She turned her head and said, "I understand, husband. This lowly concubine will only go out for a moment, and will be back soon." Good. Xiaohua then turned around and closed his eyes to control the spiritual fire that he could only sense a tiny bit. A day passed by quickly. Although Xiaohua had just entered Foundation establishment and his cultivation and spiritual sense had greatly improved, just relying on the secret technique of the divine flame art to control the spiritual fire was like a mortal using a needle to stand upside down on an awn of wheat. The difficulty was self-evident. In just a day's time, Xiaohua was already extremely tired. He had no choice but to stop and rest for a bit. It's time to cultivate a foundation establishment cultivation technique. Xiaohua waved his hand and took out the furious flame arts that he had no choice but to be bestowed upon him. First, he looked through the elementary cultivation technique and meridians. He hesitated in his heart. My physique has now followed the tempering of my bones and has already become an earth attribute physique. If I cultivate a fire attribute cultivation technique, there will definitely be obstacles. Moreover, there might also be other drawbacks. I might not know when I just started cultivating, but if they appear in the middle or late stages of foundation establishment, wouldn't it be very bad? Also, eldest senior brother said it well. There are only 2 sets of meridians to cultivate. One set is formed by Qi refinement, and the other set is formed by foundation establishment. These 2 sets are precisely the intersection of dragon and tiger, the harmony of yin and yang. My first set of meridians was tempered by a fire attribute cultivation technique. If the second set of meridians was tempered by an earth attribute cultivation technique, wouldn't it coincide with the principle of mutual promotion and suppression of the 2 attributes of fire and earth? Then, wouldn't it be easier for me to condense my core in the future? Thinking about the earth attribute cultivation technique, Xiaohua thought of the cultivation technique that he had obtained from the spirit husbandry sect disciples. Back then, he didn't mean to give it to Sun Shu and the others. He didn't expect that he would be able to use it today. Following which, Xiaohua took out the cultivation technique of the spirit husbandry sect and looked through it carefully. The cultivation technique of the spirit husbandry sect was called the earth expansion technique. It wasn't considered a high-grade cultivation technique. Just by looking at the meridians that it could open, one could tell that it would have limited prospects after successfully cultivating it. Furthermore, Xiaohua had seen many Qi refinement cultivation techniques in the Imperial Thunder Sect's library and had some understanding of cultivation techniques. However, Xiaohua didn't have much to pick at this moment. He couldn't possibly go back and ask Wu Hai for an earth attribute cultivation technique. He also couldn't wait to find a cultivation technique before cultivating. Forget it. Since I have the earth crystal Yao milk, even if the earth expansion technique is the lowest grade earth attribute cultivation technique, how can I not condense my core? Even if I take a few decades or even 100 years to condense my core, would I still be afraid of being ridiculed? Xiaohua laughed mischievously. He put away the rage flame technique and immersed his divine consciousness into the jade slip to carefully comprehend the earth amplification technique. Thus, the days passed by. Every day, Xiaohua would use a secret technique to control the spiritual fire. When he was tired, he would cultivate the earth expansion technique. At this moment, Xiaohua wasn't in a hurry to use the earth crystal Yao milk. Instead, he slowly absorbed the spiritual energy of heaven and earth and slowly opened up his meridians. The cultivation technique became more and more refined under Xiaohua's meticulous carving. Other than the basic foundational cultivation technique, Xiaohua only comprehended the God Flame technique. He hoped that he could find some secret technique from it to save Xiangyang and Yin Qinglian faster. It was a pity that the God Flame technique was extremely obscure. Furthermore, it was the latter half of the technique and the words were different. Although Xiaohua completely comprehended the jade letter that Gantian Mountain gave him, he felt that there was something wrong with it. There was a lot of content in the God Flame technique that was incongruous with the words, which made Xiaohua feel vexed. However, the secret technique that Xiaohua was using was going smoothly. It seemed like it was the simplest secret technique. Haha, great. Xiaohua had been cultivating in silence the entire time. He silently sat in front of the seal and controlled the spiritual fire. It wasn't until a month later that he suddenly laughed loudly, clapped his hands, and stood up. "What's wrong, husband?" Seeing that, Shue immediately stopped cultivating. Her face was filled with smiles as she looked at Xiaohua in anticipation. Xiaohua smiled. "Everything that happened before was me using a secret technique to faintly control the spiritual fire. If I had confidence in my heart, I wouldn't dare to pat my chest. However, from today onwards, I can pat my chest." "Haha, really? Husband, you are so amazing." Shue immediately pounced over and hugged Xiaohua. Feeling Shue's towering chest, Xiaohua smiled. "Husband's chest doesn't seem to have anything to pat?" Shue's face instantly turned red. However, she didn't leave Xiaohua's embrace. She rubbed against Xiaohua's embrace a few times and smiled. "When eldest senior brother and senior sister-in-law come out, I will let you pat me properly." "Ha ha ha. Great." Xiaohua kissed Shue's cherry lips. In the following days, the smile on Xiaohua's face became even brighter. His expression became even more at ease. Before the seal, he controlled the spiritual fire for even longer. Shue looked at her lover, who was in high spirits, from the side. Her face was filled with a sweet smile, but there was always a trace of gloominess that flashed across her face from time to time. That gloominess was like a dark cloud in the clear sky. Even if the sun was shining high up in the sky, the cool breeze couldn't blow it away. It was unknown when the thunder and lightning in the dark clouds would descend. Like this, several months passed. Counting with one's fingers, Xiang Yang and Yin Qinglian had been trapped by the bloody seal for nearly a year. Shue's cultivation didn't make any progress, and there were no signs of foundation building. However, Shue didn't seem to be in a hurry at all. It was as if this kind of life, this kind of atmosphere, was what she needed. If it wasn't for the seal that needed to be broken, Shue almost hoped that this kind of cultivation could last forever. Shue often sat cross-legged beside Xiaohua to cultivate. She liked to see Xiaohua's serious and focused appearance. She liked to see Xiaohua's occasionally frown and the corners of his mouth curl up. She liked even more to smell the scent emitted from Xiaohua's body. She closed her eyes and cultivated peacefully. Of course, if she could be held in his arms and listen to his heartbeat, Shue would be even more satisfied. The Thunder Beast's cave abode was like a paradise. Although the flame forest swamp was filled with danger, and there were many ferocious beasts, none of them dared to come close. Even the fire rats and fire bats, which were everywhere in the lava, only dared to wander far away from the cave abode. None of them dared to come close. Therefore, not a single cultivator came here for training. Not a single accident came to disturb Shue and Xiaohua's peaceful life. It seemed that everything was going according to Shue's plan. Unfortunately, on this day, Xiaohua let out a long roar. His figure rose from the ground, and with a wave of his hand, the lamp oil that had been spread on the blood-colored light cocoon was taken into the space by Xiaohua. Afterward, Xiaohua's expression was both joyful and dignified. He slowly formed gestures on his hands. As the gestures were formed, Shue felt that the surrounding spiritual energy poured into Xiaohua's body like a hurricane, and all the spiritual power in Xiaohua's body gushed out. "Go!" Xiaohua loosened his hand and launched the gesture into the seal. Then, he flicked his hand and put a few elixirs into his mouth. He stared at the seal with bright eyes, where the gesture was launched. In just a moment, a crimson light flashed on the blood-colored seal. The crimson light seemed particularly pure and dazzling in the scarlet seal. Before Shue could see it clearly, the crimson light flowed into Xiaohua's hand like mercury. "Isn't it Xiaohua's spiritual fire?" Rumble. Just as the spiritual fire fell into Xiaohua's hand, the entire blood-colored seal began to vibrate. The stagnant blood red began to boil like boiling hot water. Immediately, this blood-red color seemed to be washed away by rain. It quickly faded away, revealing the original cave of the Thunder Beast. Xiaohua was about to cry out in joy, but he heard a baby cry from inside the cave. Thunder Beast? Xiaohua immediately thought of the female Thunder Beast that was giving birth, and he couldn't help but be shocked. -8. Chapter 1909. Eldest senior brother. Xiaohua was shocked. He quickly took the spiritual fire in his hand and flew into the cave. At the same time, Shui was also very nervous. In this 1 year, they had planned many things, but the premise was that Xiangyang and Yin Qinglian had assassinated the Mother Lightning Beast. They had never thought that the Mother Lightning Beast could survive. If the Mother Lightning Beast lived, and Xiangyang and Yin Qinglian died, then wouldn't Xiao Hua's 1 year of hard work be used as a wedding dress for the Mother Lightning Beast? Wouldn't it be helping the tyrant? There was a restriction in the cave, so Xiao Hua's divine sense couldn't penetrate it. But before he could fly near the cave, Xiang Yang's surprised voice sounded, "Little junior brother, damn it." Xiao Hua's heart was immediately relieved. "Eldest senior brother, you almost scared little brother to death," Xiao Hua said with a smile, patting his chest in an exaggerated manner that he didn't even want to pat. "Thank the heavens. Thank the heavens." Shui patted Xiao Hua's long-awaited chest and cried out in joy. "Ah? Eldest senior brother?" Xiao Hua was 1 step ahead of Shui when he flew into the cave. He was shocked again, and Shui's heart was in suspense. Shui hurriedly increased her speed and flew into the cave. The Xiangyang in front of her really gave Shui a shock. Previously, Xiangyang's hair was white, and he looked like an old man. But now, although there were still some wrinkles on his face, his hair was already dark, and he looked almost 20 years younger. "Eldest senior brother, you took the lightning beast's inner core?" Shui immediately cried out in surprise. Xiao Hua also laughed loudly. "Eldest senior brother can't be old even if you want to." "Wah!" Another baby's cry rang out. Xiao Hua curiously looked over and said, "Good. This lightning beast cub is already a year old. Why isn't it dead yet?" This. Xiang Yang's face was full of embarrassment. He even said with a red face, "No, it's not the lightning beast. It's Xiang Zhili." "Xiang Zhili?" Xiao Hua was stunned. He looked over and saw Yin Qinglian turn her head. In her arms, wasn't it a baby? Moreover, the baby's head was covered in white. "What?" "Io, don't look at indecent things." Xiao Hua suddenly called out and turned his eyes over. Shui was standing right next to him. His line of sight. Wasn't it precisely the blindingly white expanse that had been covered? Shui was also stunned, but then she naturally covered her hand, spat at Xiao Hua, and quickly walked over. On the other side, Yin Qinglian's face was red. She wanted to come over, but she was too shy to come over. Eldest senior brother, what's going on?" Xiao Hua's voice stuttered as he pulled on Xiang Yang's sleeve and asked. Hee. Xiang Yang had a silly smile on his face. It was really a proud smile. He pulled Xiao Hua's hand and said, "Junior brother, follow me outside to talk." "Oh, that's right, that's right." Xiao Hua quickly walked out, and Xiang Yang also came out. When Xiang Yang proudly explained the matter, Xiao Hua suddenly understood. He laughed loudly and patted Xiang Yang's shoulder. "Eldest senior brother. Oh, eldest senior brother, little brother and Shui had always been guessing how you and sister-in-law were doing inside, but we didn't expect. Eldest senior brother was really living a comfortable life. If I had known earlier, I wouldn't have worked so hard day and night. Maybe later on, there would even be a Xiang Zi." Everyone, what do you think? It turned out that the heavens really blessed a loyal person like Xiang Yang. After the male thunder beast used the blood seal to seal the entire cave, the male thunder beast died. At this time, the female thunder beast was giving birth. It was unknown whether it was because Xiao Hua hit the female thunder beast and damaged the position of the thunder beast's fetus, or it was dangerous for a thunder beast to give birth. In short, the female thunder beast had a difficult birth. Blood kept flowing out, and it was impossible to stop it. Moreover, the thunder beast's baby was still not born. Xiangyang and Yin Qinglian originally wanted to kill the female thunder beast to save their own lives, but seeing this situation, Xiangyang and Yin Qinglian couldn't bear to do it. In the end, Yin Qinglian even helped the female thunder beast give birth. However, the heavenly Tao was fair. Thunder beasts were ferocious creatures in the world, and they were always obstructed by the heavenly Tao. The female thunder beast gave birth to the thunder beast's baby. With great difficulty, Yin Qinglian held the thunder beast's baby in her arms. She only licked the mucus off the Thunder Beast's body clean. The female Thunder Beast's eyes were filled with love as she passed away. However, the mother and child were connected by heart. When the female Thunder Beast passed away, she placed the Thunder Beast's little hand in Yin Qinglian's hand. She also didn't forget to pat her still protruding belly. At first, Yin Qinglian didn't understand. Later, many days after the female Thunder Beast died, Yin Qinglian suddenly understood. The female Thunder Beast was talking about its own Niden. It wanted Yin Qinglian to take its Niden in exchange for the life of the Thunder Beast's baby. The female Thunder Beast had planned this for a long time, but she didn't expect Yin Qinglian and Xiangyang to be so kind. The Thunder Beast's baby was just born. It didn't have wings at all, but it had a small tail. Its small hands and feet were curled up together. It was so pitiful, just like a pitch-black baby. How could Yin Qinglian bear to kill it? Later, for the sake of his Taoist foundation and lifespan, Xiangyang took out the male Thunder Beast's Niden and refined it according to the secret method. The secret method was correct. Xiangyang's Taoist foundation was indeed repaired, but his lifespan should also be extended. However, the secret method didn't expect that the male Thunder Beast's Niden was so strong that after Xiangyang used it, he didn't fall. For 49 consecutive nights, he beat the drum and challenged Xiangyang every night. Fortunately, Yin Qinglian was a foundation-building expert. It could be said that she met her match, a general meeting of talent. After 49 matches, Yin and Yang converged and finally gave birth to the Xiangjili that Xiangyang had been talking about for God knows how many years. In 10 months of pregnancy, that is, 10 days ago, Yin Qinglian just gave birth to Xiangjili. Now, it's not even a month old yet. Isn't she breastfeeding? Xiangyang heard Xiaohua's joke, but he didn't laugh. He turned around and called, Qinglian, the lowly concubine is here. At this time, Yin Qinglian had finished breastfeeding Xiangjili. She tidied up her clothes and walked out with a plump and rosy face. When she saw Xiaohua, she couldn't help but blush again. Then, she looked at Xiangyang. The two nodded slightly. At the same time, they bent their legs and were about to kneel down. "Io, you can't." When Xiaohua saw this, he was immediately alarmed. He brushed his hand and immediately grabbed the two people's arms. He called out, "Eldest senior brother, eldest senior sister, why are you waiting?" Xiangyang and Yin Qinglian simply didn't listen to Xiaohua. The magic power in their bodies rapidly revolved, and the divine abilities in their bodies surged. They were about to kneel down. "Hee, eldest senior brother and eldest senior sister, are you going to test this little brother's cultivation?" Xiaohua chuckled mischievously. True essence flowed, and magic power was also used. It was the same situation that Xiangyang encountered before. No matter how much strength the two of them exerted, no matter how much they struggled, they didn't move an inch. They simply couldn't kneel down. Xiangyang and Yin Qinglian's eyes flashed with astonishment. Absolute astonishment. The magic power of two middle foundation-building cultivators. This wasn't a battle of magic treasures. It was a true competition. They actually couldn't compare to Xiaohua. -8. Chapter 19:10. A trace of bitterness and helplessness flashed through Xiangyang's eyes. He said in a low voice, "Sigh, Qinglian, let's leave it at that. Junior brother isn't an outsider. Just let him know our thoughts. I'll listen to Lord Husband's instructions." Yin Qinglian knew that she couldn't kneel down, so she said hurriedly, "That's right. If you have something to say, just say it. Why do you have to be like this?" Xiaohua hurriedly helped the two up. Xiangyang said with a smile, "Actually, there are two things I want to thank Junior Brother for. The first is definitely to break this blood seal. It will allow brother and your senior sister-in-law to see the light of day again. It will also allow you, Junior Marshal Nephew, to return to the human world." Xiangyang's words were correct. Xiangyang and Yin Qinglian had also tried countless times to break this blood seal. Unfortunately, they couldn't even leave a trace on the seal. If it wasn't for Xiaohua, not to mention 1 year, even 10 years, 100 years, or 1,000 years, the two of them wouldn't be able to come out. Then Xiangjili wouldn't be able to see a third person. Hee, eldest senior brother sacrificed himself to let junior brother escape. If junior brother didn't save junior brother, How could junior brother face others? Xiaohua said with a smile. Moreover, junior brother just happened to be able to break this seal and increase junior brother's cultivation by a lot. Why wouldn't junior brother do it? Junior brother, you actually built foundation? After reuniting from the calamity, Xiangyang and Yin Qinglian only now discovered that Xiaohua had built foundation. Congratulations. Congratulations. Ha ha ha. Xiaohua laughed loudly. Junior brother had already built foundation when junior brother saw you two a year ago. Eldest senior brother's congratulations were late by a year. Of course, it was too urgent at that time. I really didn't expect junior brother to build foundation so quickly. Xiangyang said with a smile. Oh right, junior brother. Inside the five-element soul-capturing formation. Cough cough. Yin Qinglian saw that Xiangyang changed the topic and immediately coughed twice. Hearing this, Xiangyang immediately woke up and said, Oh, just now I wanted to thank junior brother for saving my life. After that, I want to ask junior brother for a favor. Eldest senior brother, as long as junior brother can do it, I will agree. Xiaohua said with a smile. Oh, you're the one who said it. Xiangyang smiled, looking very sinister. What is it? Xiaohua had a bad feeling in his heart. It's very simple. Just make Xiangji worship you as his master. Yin Qinglian could not help but say, Ah? Xiaohua was completely stupefied and stuttered a bit. You're not mistaken, right? Eldest senior sister-in-law? Yes, there's no mistake. Xiangyang nodded. I've discussed it with your sister-in-law. We want Xiangji to worship you as his master. You agreed to it. Don't. Xiaohua hurriedly shook his head and said, Eldest senior brother, this is something that I am unable to do. I definitely cannot agree to. Yin Qinglian was slightly disappointed, but Xiangyang persisted. Little junior brother, others may not know about your divine arts, but how could I not know? If I don't worship a good teacher like you, who should I worship? Sigh. Xiaohua sighed and said with a bitter smile, I've already used my divine sense to examine Xiangzhili just now. All of his meridians have been opened, and he is born with the lightning attribute. Moreover, his physical body seems to be very good. This kind of cultivation genius is rare in the Imperial Thunder sect. He can even worship any nascent soul cultivator in the Imperial Thunder sect as his master. So why must he worship me as his master? Xiangyang smiled and said, I've long known about Li Er's talent. First, it's the power of my lightning beast's inner core. Second, it's Qinglian's secret technique that cultivates the lightning escape. Both of these are inseparable from little junior brother. If you don't want to be his master, who can? This is the will of the heavens. Eldest senior brother, Xiaohua said firmly. You also know that I was born as a loose cultivator, and have always lacked a systematic and comprehensive understanding of cultivation. This is something that must be done as a master, right? Just based on this point, I definitely cannot be Li Er's master. That's right. Xiangyang also came to a realization. Xiaohua was good in every way, and his divine arts were also outstanding, but his foundation was really too poor. He was absolutely unqualified to teach disciples. If Xiangzhili were to be taught by Xiaohua, wouldn't he become a loose cultivator? Forget it, eldest senior brother. Xiaohua thought for a moment and said, I originally wanted to give him a gift, but I don't have anything suitable in my storage bag. How about this? When Li Er's cultivation is successful in the future, how about I give him a great divine art? Great divine art? Xiangyang stared blankly. He himself knew that all the great techniques of nascent soul cultivators were called divine arts, and great divine arts naturally referred to the great techniques of spirit-severing cultivators and above. It was absolutely a secret technique of spirit-severing cultivators. Xiaohua had just reached the early stage of foundation establishment, and he actually promised Xiangzhili a great divine art of spirit-severing cultivators. How could he not be stunned on the spot? This little junior brother, did he get it wrong again? This was Xiangyang's first reaction. Thank you, little junior brother. Yin Qinglian at the side was overjoyed. She quickly hugged Xiangzhili and was about to kneel down again. Don't. Xiaohua quickly held her again and said with a smile, It's not a big deal. When Li Er grows up, I will find something to teach him. Okay. Xiangyang quickly put away his doubts and said with a smile, "Great divine art, in Xiaohua's words, it's not a big deal." Damn it, Xiaohua. I don't know if he knows what a great divine art is. He actually dared to give it to someone so casually. Roar. A hoarse, weak, and extremely helpless voice came out from inside the cave. Lightning Beast. This voice was extremely soft, but also extremely familiar. Xiaohua couldn't help but call out. Xiaohua looked up and saw that Xue Xue was also carrying a pitch-black baby that was less than a foot long. The baby's pitch-black skin was in stark contrast to Xue Xue's white skin. "Yes, this is the Lightning Beast cub," Xiangyang said with a bitter smile. "This thing is born like this. It doesn't know what to eat or drink. It doesn't use spirit herbs or pills. It doesn't even use your senior sister-in-law's milk. Previously, it would often cry, but now it has been more than a month. If it still doesn't cry, I'm afraid it won't make it." Xiaohua's divine sense swept over it. Sure enough, the Lightning Beast cub was extremely weak. If nothing unexpected happened, it would die today or tomorrow. "Ai, poor child," Xue Xue said in a low voice with a mournful look on her face. Of course, Xiang Zhili's parents were next to him. This Lightning Beast cub's parents had already passed away, so who could take care of it? If a vicious person took it, they would probably use it to refine some sinister magic weapon. "Give it to me," Xiaohua said after thinking for a while. "Darling Xiao, do you have a way?" Xue Xue was overjoyed and stretched out her arm to hand over the Lightning Beast cub. Xiaohua shook his head. "I don't know, but since you all don't have a way, give it to me." Saying that, he took out a spirit storage bag and pretended to put it in, but actually sent it into the space. As soon as the Lightning Beast cub entered the space was instantly filled with lightning, which crackled as they struck the Lightning Beast. The lightning entered its body, but surprisingly, the Lightning Beast cub wasn't injured at all. It even opened its extremely cute little paws seductively. "Damn it, this young master here." Xiaohua smiled bitterly as he thought of Little Silver and the water-patterned butterfly's eggs. "Ai, if I had a spirit storage bag, Little Lei wouldn't be like this." Xiangyang sighed. "Little Lei?" Xiaohua was blank for a moment before he understood and smiled. "Little Lei, that's a good name." Then, he glanced at the cave abode again. "Haha, little junior brother, there's no need to look anymore. There's nothing left in the cave abode. I've been inside for a year," Xiangyang said as he patted Xiaohua on the shoulder. "Hee, it's nothing. I'm just looking at the Lightning Beast's corpse and helping Little Lei bury it," Xiaohua said with a smile. "Hee." Xiangyang pulled out 4 storage bags from his waist and handed them to Xiaohua. "These are the things inside the cave abode. Apart from Martial Uncle Zhanyez, there's also what I left behind. They're all here. Take them." Martial Uncle Zhanyez. Xiaohua smacked his lips. He really did want Zhanyez's storage bag, because there would definitely be pill formulas inside. Unfortunately, Xiangyang said, Martial Uncle Zhanyez's corpse and storage bag will be taken back to the Imperial Thunder Sect. I can't give them to you. Moreover, I've also taken the other half of the male Lightning Beast's core. After all, I have to give the sect an explanation. Of course, the female Lightning Beast's core and the 2 Lightning Beast corpses are all in one storage bag. I don't need to give them to the sect. 4 storage bags. Big senior brother, you've given me too much. Xiaohua waved his hand and said, I only need 1. Hee, take them. Xiangyang said indifferently, I've already counted them. My 10,000 Thunder Valley has been poor for a long time. I have to take some things back. In addition, there are some things that I can't give to my master. Otherwise, I'm willing to give everything to you. So it's like this. Xiaohua understood that Xiangyang had already taken a lot. These were all for him. So he took them without any hesitation and said with a smile, Thank you, big senior brother, for your generous gift. It's nothing. You deserve it. Xiangyang shook his head and said, Actually, everything in this cave should be given to you. Don't. Xiaohua hurriedly waved his hand and said with a smile, Little brother's appetite is small. Just give me a little. Just give me a little. Xue Xue looked at the 4 storage bags that Xiaohua took. All of them were high-grade goods. Xiang Yang should have obtained them from the cultivators who were killed by the thunder beasts. Needless to say, the things inside these 4 storage bags were definitely not what Xiaohua meant by a little bit. Big senior brother, can we leave now? Xiaohua asked. Of course. When little junior brother's spiritual fire was about to burn the seal, I've already looked through the entire cave several times. Xiang Yang replied. Okay. Xiaohua turned around and put away the rabbit formation. Everyone followed Xiaohua and flew out. Outside the mountain peak, the flame forest mountains were still hot. However, Xiang Yang and Yin Qinglian took a deep breath, looked at each other, and said with a smile, the air outside is still fresh. Of course, after staying in a pile of bones for a year, even if they were newlyweds every night, they probably wouldn't be able to bear it. Big senior brother, I'm afraid you can't train with little brother and Xue Xue anymore, right? Xiaohua asked with a smile. Hearing this, Yin Qinglian's face flushed red again. She was extremely charming. How was she still the same as before? Xiang Yang shook his head and said, Of course not. My lifespan should have been resolved. Lear has also been born. I naturally have to accompany your senior sister-in-law back to 10,000 Thunder Valley. -8. Chapter 1911. Then, he looked at Xiaohua. You've also built your foundation, and your abilities aren't below mine. With you accompanying Xue Xue, I can rest assured. All right. Xiaohua nodded. I'll accompany senior brother back to Shihuang Town. All right. Xiang Yang originally wanted to refuse, but after thinking for a while, he nodded. Then, the 4 of them flew out of Flame Forest Swamp. Along the way, Xiang Yang's expression was especially happy. Xiaohua followed Xiang Yang and flew in front. He looked behind him at Yin Qinglian and Xue Xue and said with a smile, Hee, senior brother, Master will be happy when we go back this time. He even brought Xiang Zhili back. That's one thing. Moreover, didn't you build your foundation too? How can Master not be happy? Xiang Yang immediately replied, core formation after foundation building. Master, won't be happy for long. Xiaohua shook his head slightly. You should understand Master's heart. Xiang Yang advised. It's hard to say. Xiaohua was a bit annoyed. He had switched to cultivating earth-type techniques, so he couldn't explain it to Xiang Yang. At this moment, several divine senses swept over and locked onto several people in a very rude manner. Who is it? Xiaohua was angry and shouted coldly. Unfortunately, he didn't know any divine senses that could harm others. Otherwise, he definitely wouldn't hesitate to use it. Fellow Taoists. A late-stage foundation-building cultivator flew over from afar, followed by several middle and early-stage foundation-building cultivators. Fellow Taoist, please. Xiang Yang pulled Xiaohua and stepped forward. He cupped his hands and said, I'm Xiang Yang from the Imperial Thunder Sect. What business do you have with me? Fellow Taoist Xiang. I'm Qiong Ming from the Spirit Husbandry Sect. When the cultivator heard that he was a disciple of the Imperial Thunder Sect, his expression immediately changed. He smiled and said, I just want to ask fellow Taoist about a small matter. Oh? Please speak. Xiang Yang nodded. I wonder if fellow Taoist Xiang has seen the soul essence of a ferocious beast? Or a ferocious beast unrelated to the spirit beasts in Flame Forest Swamp? Qiong Ming hesitated and asked. Xiang Yang was stunned. He scratched his head and said, I don't know what fellow Taoist Qiong is talking about, but I'm sure that my junior brother and I have never seen such a ferocious beast. I see. Qiong Ming looked at Xiang Yang, then at Xiaohua, then at Yin Qinglian and the baby in her arms. He nodded and said, Then I'll have to trouble fellow Taoist Xiang. Please. Senior Martial Brother Qiong, a middle-stage foundation establishment disciple at Qiong Ming's side, said in a low voice. Elder Yuan gave the order to strictly interrogate all those above middle-stage foundation establishment. Qiong Ming said unhappily. Elder also instructed that all Aurus Core stage cultivators must report to him. Are you also going to block Aurus Core stage cultivators? This is Senior Brother Chang's matter. The disciple muttered. Qiong Ming flicked his sleeves. I have my own plans. Please excuse me, fellow Taoist. Qiong Ming cupped his fists and said with a smile, If fellow Taoist Xiang sees this item in the Flame Forest Swamp, please send me a message. I'll be eternally grateful. Of course. Xiangyang nodded and looked at everyone. Then, he left with Xiaohua and the others. Just as Xiangyang left, Qiongming turned his head and said angrily, Junior Marshal Brother Li Dongming, since this team is led by me, please don't break the rules of the sect. For the past half a year, Junior Marshal Brother Li has doubted my decisions many times. Senior Marshal Brother Chong, I'm doing this for the sake of the Imperial Thunder Sect, Li Dongming said with a fake smile, since there are disciples of the Imperial Thunder Sect coming out from the Flame Forest Swamp. Although the direction is wrong, I still have to ask them. There's no need to search their souls, but they have to swear a hard oath, right? Humph, Qiongming almost laughed out loud. You want to force the disciples of the Imperial Thunder Sect to swear a hard oath? Why? Can't I? Li Dongming said stubbornly. Our spirit husbandry sect is no longer the spirit husbandry sect from a year ago. Even if we can't compare to the Imperial Thunder Sect now, we will surpass them sooner or later. Besides, it's just 2 middle-stage foundation establishment stage cultivators, 1 early-stage foundation establishment stage cultivator, and 1 chi refinement stage cultivator. What's the big deal about forcing them to swear a hard oath? Do you think the Imperial Thunder Sect can challenge our spirit husbandry sect? I can't be bothered to talk to you. Qiongming waved his sleeves and was about to fly away. However, Li Dongming was still in high spirits. He laughed and said, There hasn't been any news for more than a year. I'm afraid that everyone has slacked off. I'll use the disciples of the Imperial Thunder Sect to raise everyone's spirits. Which junior marshal brother is willing to follow me to take a look? I'm willing. There were actually a few people who weren't afraid of death and were excited. You guys, Qiongming looked around and saw that they were people who didn't get along with him in the sect, or people who were very close to Li Dongming. He smiled and said, You guys can go. I'll go back and report this. Hee, Senior Marshal Brother Chong, you can go too. Li Dongming laughed loudly. I've vented my anger for the Imperial Thunder Sect. Maybe Elder Yuan will reward me. That's right. The rest of the people shouted and followed Li Dongming to chase after Xiangyang and the others. Seeing this, Qiongming shook his head slightly. He knew that since a year ago, the disciples of the Spirit Husbandry sect had obtained Chao Qin's soul essence, and their cultivation had increased by a lot. In the beginning, they were still cautious when they searched around the Flame Forest Swamp. However, as they gradually became stronger, they became bolder. Other than the big sects like the country of Shi's 3 cultivation sects, the Washing Flower sect, and the Imperial Thunder sect, many cultivators from the other small sects had been killed. Even cultivators in the middle and late stages of the Foundation Establishment stage were killed by the Spirit Husbandry sect. Therefore, their confidence grew. How could they not covet the 4 cultivators from the Imperial Thunder sect and their children? Most importantly, there were 4 storage bags hanging on the waist of the early stage Foundation Establishment stage cultivator. Let's go. We'll go back. Qiongming smiled bitterly and waved his hand. He led the people who were still standing in the air and left. He naturally knew that the disciples of the Imperial Thunder sect would definitely be at a disadvantage. However, what did this have to do with him? He only cared about reporting Li Dongming's dissatisfaction with his management to the elders. Xiaohua had followed Xiangyang for less than the time it took to brew a cup of tea when Li Dongming's divine sense swept over. Xiaohua was furious and was about to stop when Xiangyang winked at him and said, Hurry up and leave. Xiaohua was slightly stunned. Then, he followed Xiangyang and flew out of the Flame Forest Swamp using a normal flying technique. Quick, catch up to them. Li Dongming saw that the disciples of the Imperial Thunder sect had escaped and immediately became excited. He ordered the disciples of the Spirit Husbandry sect to give chase. In the time it took to smoke a cigarette, Xiangyang and the others arrived at the top of a fire lake. There were no other cultivators nearby. Xiangyang stopped and gestured for Yin Qinglian to stand behind him. He turned around and said coldly, I wonder why fellow cultivators of the Spirit Husbandry sect are chasing after me? Do you not want the Imperial Thunder sect to give face to the Spirit Husbandry sect? Ha! Li Dongming waved his hand and several disciples surrounded Xiaohua and the others. He laughed maniacally and said, "You took my spirit husbandry sect's Chao Wu soul essence. If you don't hand it over, quickly tell us where it is. Otherwise, don't blame us for not giving face to the Imperial Thunder sect." -8. Chapter 1912. Damn it. Seeing how Li Dongming was so arrogant as to pin the crime on his own family, Xiaohua immediately thought of the few spirit husbandry sect disciples who were at the peak of the qi refinement realm. He couldn't help but fly into a rage. Birds of a feather flock together. Why are all the spirit husbandry sect disciples the same? But soon after, Xiaohua smiled again and thought to himself, although this guy is extremely boorish and wants to make things up, he's actually right. Xiang Yang's expression changed slightly, but he did not panic. He cupped his hands and said, "Fellow Taoist from the spirit husbandry sect, I've already explained to fellow Taoist Qiongming that I don't know what soul essence you're talking about. Your senior brother has already let us go. Fellow Taoist, how can you pin the crime on us?" "Haha, senior brother Qiong was careless and was deceived by you. Fortunately, I realized it early. Otherwise, you would have escaped from the flame forest swamp." Xiang Yang frowned and said, "Fellow Taoist Li, I don't understand what you're saying." "You don't understand?" Li Dongming sneered. "If you're not guilty, why are you running?" "Running?" Xiang Yang smiled. "The flame forest swamp is so big. Do we need to report to your spirit husbandry sect disciples if we want to do anything? No matter what, I'm going to check your storage bags to make sure you don't have Chao's soul essence," Li Dongming said with a fake smile. "Storage bags? Soul essence?" Xiaohua smiled and said, "I'm stupid. I don't know what this soul essence is. How can it be placed in a storage bag?" Li Dongming was at a loss for words. With a flick of his sleeve, he took out his spirit storage bag and sneered, "Fellow Taoist Xiang, this Li doesn't want to pursue the matter. Hand over your junior brother's storage bags to this Li, and this Li will make the decision to let you all go. Don't make this Li lose his temper. These junior brothers of mine don't have good tempers." When Xiang Yang heard this, he was so angry that his nose became crooked. What the hell was this? They had not even said a few words, and they had already revealed their true colors. Their goal was the 4 or 5 storage bags on Xiaohua's waist. Were they still disciples of a cultivation sect? They were even more shameless than rogue cultivators. Eldest senior brother. What's the point of talking to them? Xiaohua immediately stood up and charged forward, blocking the path between Li Dongming and Xiang Yang. He waved his hands and cast the spell that he had prepared long ago. Numerous fire dragons that were as thick as thumbs appeared in Xiaohua's hands and charged towards the spirit husbandry sect disciples. Xiaohua was proficient in fire spells, and in the past year, he had been controlling his spirit fire all the time. His understanding and usage of fire spells had reached a new level, and the fire aura in the flame forest swamp was abundant. When Xiaohua cast the fire spell, the fire dragons that were as thick as thumbs appeared in his hands. After flying for about a foot, they immediately sucked in the surrounding spiritual energy of heaven and earth, turning into fire dragons that were as thick as fists. Although the fire dragons were not as powerful as when Yi Yang's fan flashed, and they did not mimic the fire dragons perfectly, the spirit husbandry sect disciples were still caught off guard when they saw such a powerful fire dragon charging towards them. Fight! Many of them cast spells in panic, and some of them even took out the yellow talismans from their storage bags. However, how could Xiaohua's fire dragons be broken by simple yellow talismans? The spirit husbandry sect disciples were shocked when they saw the surging heat wave surrounding them. The yellow talismans that they had shot out were extinguished after spinning in the heat wave for a short while. Even the yellow talismans were burned. They retreated rapidly and wanted to take out their magic treasures. However, just as everyone retreated, the fire dragon's tongue suddenly lapped in the direction that they had retreated. Then, it retracted and spread in all directions. The fire dragons connected together to form a wall of fire, separating the spirit husbandry sect disciples from Xiaohua and the rest. Hiss! The group of disciples could not help but gasp. Putting aside the strength of his magic power, his mastery of fire control was definitely something that they could not compare to. The disciples of the Thunder Control sect indeed live up to their reputation. This was the thought that suddenly appeared in their minds. However, was that all? Just as the spirit husbandry sect disciples were filled with admiration, they suddenly realized that their respected senior brother Li Dongming had actually been separated from them. Furthermore, he had been strangled by a spirit husbandry sect disciple who was in the initial stage of the Foundation establishment realm. The spirit husbandry sect disciples were stunned. They had really only paid attention to themselves and had not paid attention to anyone else, especially the extremely brave senior brother Li. Li Dongming was also extremely embarrassed. Like the other spirit husbandry sect disciples, his first reaction when he saw the ferocious fire dragon was to use the ice shield technique to block the fire dragon. However, the ice shield only lasted for a moment before it was melted by the fire dragon. Seeing that the fire dragon had turned into a sea of fire and was about to drown him, Li Dongming immediately retreated. However, just as he was about to fly, he instantly felt a sharp black iron needle stabbing towards his waist from his back. Li Dongming had no choice but to stop moving slightly. He swung his hand, and the thunder palm was released. However, just as the thunder palm was released, Xiaohua, who was standing outside the sea of fire, suddenly moved. He charged into the sea of fire like a ferocious demon, and there seemed to be a spear in his hand. Demonic weapon? Li Dongming immediately understood with a sweep of his divine sense. Slightly startled, he hurriedly made a circle with his right hand, and a mirror-like defensive shield appeared to block the attack. At the same time, his figure once again plummeted downwards. However, it was clear that the defensive shield was easily broken by Xiaohua, and Xiaohua's figure was completely unaffected by the defensive shield. In the blink of an eye, he was already beside Li Dongming. Zilala, only then did Li Dongming's thunder palm hit the black iron needle away. Xiaohua's left hand reached out with the tip of the demonic spear and stabbed towards Li Dongming's chest. Li Dongming panicked and hurriedly waved his hand again, and the thunder palm was released again. However, just as the thunder palm was formed, Xiaohua's left hand shook, and the demonic spear disappeared into thin air. What is this guy doing? Just as this thought appeared in Li Dongming's mind, Xiaohua's right hand appeared around his neck like a ghost. A burst of light flashed, and the defensive yellow talisman around Li Dongming's body was actually crushed by Xiaohua. That ice-cold hand was grabbing Li Dongming's neck. Fellow Taoist, let's talk nicely. Li Dongming was extremely embarrassed, but the irresistible force around his neck made him feel despair, and he couldn't help but speak softly. Seeing this, the spirit husbandry sect disciples looked at each other. They didn't know if they should attack or save him. They were afraid of breaking the vases. Little junior brother, after building his foundation, he has indeed become much more powerful. Xiang Yang was also astonished. He knew very well that even if he were to fight against Li Dongming, he would only be able to last a few rounds. If he didn't take out his magic weapon, he wouldn't be able to do anything. However, Xiaohua didn't use any magic weapon at all, and he was able to grab the neck of a cultivator in the middle stage of the Foundation establishment realm. He could kill him at any time. Xiaohua raised his phoenix eyes and glanced at the spirit husbandry sect disciples outside the firewall. He laughed coldly and said, "Fellow Taoist Li, there are so many people from your spirit husbandry sect. I'm really scared. My hand can't help but tremble." As he said that, Xiaohua's hand trembled, and his strength increased again. Li Dongming almost suffocated, and he hurriedly said in a low voice, "Fellow Taoist, I was blind, cough cough. I've really offended you." Seeing that Li Dongming immediately gave in, Xiaohua also secretly praised him. This fellow knows how to adapt to the situation. Looks like my cultivation technique is settled. All right. Xiaohua nodded and said loudly, "If you want your senior brother Li to live, then retract your divine sense. I have something to say to him." Then, he swung his hand and threw out a silence talisman. He looked at Li Dongming with a smile. Seeing Xiaohua's malicious smile, Li Dongming suddenly had goosebumps all over his body. Like a weak girl, he begged, Fellow Taoist, what do you want?" When the spirit husbandry sect disciples heard Xiaohua's words, They hurriedly retracted their divine sense, not daring to release it again. Seeing that there was no sound from the other side and that their vision was blocked, they all looked at each other in dismay once again. It was also very fast. It was only the time to brew a cup of tea. The wall of fire quickly faded away, and Xiaohua and Li Dongming appeared in front of them again. Xiaohua was full of smiles, but Li Dongming was a little forced. Haha, fellow Taoist Li, your junior brothers are all looking at you. So you have to smile, okay? Don't let them see that there's something wrong with the two of us, or else they'll be suspicious. Xiaohua transmitted his voice. Haha. Li Dongming laughed as expected and said to his junior brothers around him, it's really a big problem. This junior brother Xiao is a foundation establishment fellow Taoist I met 2 years ago when I was training. Just now, I said that he looked a little familiar, so I didn't attack him. I didn't expect junior brother Zhao's temper to still be as fiery as 2 years ago when he just entered the foundation establishment realm. He didn't even allow me to ask before attacking. Yes, because junior brother Xiao also had some doubts. He used a spell to ask me about the secret matters 2 years ago. Junior brothers, you don't have to worry. So that's how it is. Seeing Li Dongming say with a smile, everyone's hearts also calmed down. Only Shui was laughing so hard that she wanted to break into the sky. Xiang Yang and Yin Qinglian wanted to laugh, but didn't dare to. Hee, since you've already recognized me, I'm sure senior brother Li also understands that it's impossible for junior brother to have taken some soul essence from your esteemed sect. Moreover, junior brother is truly ashamed that he didn't tell senior brother about junior brother's origins. Xiaohua said rather sincerely. No matter, no matter. Li Dongming waved his hand generously. Every cultivator has their own secrets, so how can I investigate? I hope junior brother Xiao can come to my Black Spirit sect for a chat when you have time in the future. Sure, I'll definitely go and nag senior brother Li in the future. Xiaohua's expression was like that of a good friend who hadn't seen each other for a long time. He was really reluctant to part. Soon after, Li Dongming cupped his hands and left with his junior brothers. When everyone's figures disappeared, Shui couldn't help but giggle. She pointed at Xiaohua and said, Darling Xiao, you actually entered the foundation establishment realm 3 years ago. How come I didn't know? -8. Chapter 1913. I can't help it. In this world, only fellow Taoist Li from Spirit Husbandry sect knows that I built my foundation 3 years ago. I can't not give him face. Xiaohua touched his nose and smiled. After Shui finished laughing, she quietly asked, Darling Xiao, what did you say to Li Dongming? Hee, fellow Taoist Shui. I told fellow Taoist Li Dongming clearly that only he and I can know about it. Other people can't know about it. That's why I can't tell you. Xiaohua said proudly. Looking at Xiaohua's smug look, Shui pouted and said, Tell me if you want. If you don't tell me, I'm too lazy to know. Ha, let's go. Xiang Yang laughed. He knew that Xiaohua must have gotten something good. Moreover, it was probably some secret of Spirit Husbandry sect. Otherwise, Li Dongming wouldn't have played along with Xiaohua. As they continued to walk forward, although they encountered several groups of cultivators, most of them were early-stage foundation-building disciples. There were even quite a few aura refining disciples who were respectful and reverent toward Xiaohua and the others. Xiaohua had finally gotten addicted to acting as a senior several times with great difficulty, so he really enjoyed watching them bow and salute him. Young Master is now also a foundation-building senior. A few more days passed. Seeing that they were about to arrive at Shihuang village, Xiangyang asked, Junior brother, have you and junior sister Shui decided on where to go? Xiaohua looked at Shui and smiled. As long as Shui wants to go, I'll go with her. Who cares if it's the end of the world or the corner of the sea? Junior sister Shui, I really envy you. Originally, I wanted to go see Cultivation. Who knew that the heavens would play tricks on me? I just came out and you want to go back. Yin Qinglian hugged Xiang Zhili. Her charm was really charming. She regained the demeanor of a famous beauty from Imperial Thunder sect when she was young. Junior sister Shui is so happy. Others can't even envy you. Shui smiled. Then you're still waiting for the trip to Cultivation? Shui looked at Xiaohua and said happily, As long as I have you with me, not to mention Cultivation, I'm willing to go to Tianan or Debay. Ha ha ha. Xiangyang looked at Xiaohua and Xue Xue's lovey-dovey scene and laughed happily. Shihuang Town was just around the corner. Just as Xiaohua and the others were about to descend from the sky, they saw 3 foundation-building cultivators across from them. Their faces were filled with anxiety as they hurriedly flew towards them. The one in front had a face as white as jade and 3 strands of long beard under his chin. He had the appearance of an immortal. This person looks familiar. When Xiaohua saw this mid-foundation establishment cultivator, he couldn't help but stare blankly. He seemed to recognize him, but since he was a mid-foundation establishment senior, Xiaohua naturally had an impression of him. Unfortunately, Xiaohua had no impression of him at all. Strange. Xiaohua unconsciously glanced at the cultivator. The cultivator also noticed and glanced at Xiaohua. Seeing that he was a foundation-building cultivator and that there were 2 mid-foundation-building cultivators behind him, he didn't say anything and just coldly snorted. He cupped his hands towards Xiangyang and Yin Qinglian and left without saying a word. Xiangyang was also surprised. Looking at the cultivator's back, he asked, "Junior brother, do you know this person?" Xiaohua shook his head. "He looks familiar, but I really haven't seen him before, so I took a second look." "Oh." Xiangyang didn't take it seriously and said with a smile, "Not to mention the cultivators of the Dawn Rain continent. Even the cultivators of my country of Xi are like carps crossing the river. There really are many of them. You wouldn't know any cultivators you've seen before, so it's normal that you don't have any impression of him." And Xiaohua also didn't think so and said with a smile, "Forget it. Who cares who he is? Let's respectfully send off senior brother, senior sister, and Xiao Zhili. Hee, don't forget your promise." Xiangyang glanced at Xiang Zhili, who was in Yin Qinglian's arms, and said with a smile, "Don't worry." Xiaohua patted his chest. "I can still guarantee this." Immediately, Xiangyang stopped in midair, no longer moving forward. Senior brother?" Xiaohua asked curiously, "Why aren't you moving?" Hee. Xiangyang clapped his hands and took out the concealed thunderbolt sound transmitting talisman he used last time. Xiaohua suddenly understood, but then he said with surprise, "Why is senior brother looking for the Imperial Thunder Sect disciple on duty?" "Junior brother, just wait and see," Xiangyang said rather mysteriously. After the concealed thunderbolt sound transmitting talisman was sent out, a middle stage foundation establishment cultivator slowly flew over, looked at Xiangyang and the others, and also said slowly, "Which Imperial Thunder Sect's Thunder Palace disciple are you? What business do you have?" Seeing that the disciple on duty was actually a middle stage foundation establishment cultivator, Xiangyang was delighted. He clapped his hands, took out 2 tokens, and handed them over, saying, "I am Xiangyang from Thunderbolt Palace, and this is I's token." That cultivator waved his hand, and the 2 tokens fell into his hand. He scanned them with his divine sense, then frowned and said, "This is Martial Uncle Zhenye's token. What does it mean?" "Good. Senior brother knows that Martial Uncle Zhenye has already died, and his corpse is in I's storage pouch. Martial Uncle Zhenye was my Thunderbolt Palace's alchemist, and his storage pouch is on I. Moreover," Xiangyang's following words were transmitted. "Oh?" That disciple's face was shocked, and then he vigilantly scanned with his divine sense. He clapped his hands and handed over his token, saying, "I am Qin Ping, and this is I's token." Xiangyang didn't dare to be careless. He took the token, looked at it and smiled. "Thank you, senior brother Qian." "No problem." Qian Ping took the token and returned the 2 tokens to Xiangyang, saying, "Junior brother Xiang, please wait for a moment. I will inform a few senior brothers to come and escort you back to Imperial Thunder Sect." After Qian Ping flew away, Xiaohua secretly gave a thumbs up, saying, "Big senior brother, you're really something. I never thought of this before. There's no other way." Xiangyang looked at Yin Qinglian and the child in her arms and said lovingly, "Now that you have a child, you have to be careful. Moreover, escorting the remains of my Imperial Thunder Sect's alchemists and other things is also the duty of disciples like senior brother Qian Ping." Xiaohua understood that Zhenye's storage pouch not only contained spirit herbs, but also pill recipes and even cultivation methods. These were all treasures of the Imperial Thunder sect. If they were lost outside, it would definitely be a loss. If Xiangyang brought them back, it would be a great merit. There was no need to mention the cultivation methods and items from other sects. Sigh. Thinking of this, Xiao Hua lost interest in the 4 storage bags he took. Big senior brother will probably take the cultivation methods back. Speaking of this, Xiangyang was slightly surprised and said curiously, but it's also strange. This senior brother Qianping is a disciple of Imperial Thunder Palace, and from his name, he should be a direct disciple of Imperial Thunder Palace. Why would he be on duty at Western Yellow Village? It's really puzzling. Then I'll have to ask senior brother Qian. Xiao Hua smiled, but his heart was moved, thinking to himself, could it be that Imperial Thunder Palace sent a disciple out for Qian Qinghua? Thinking of Qian Qinghua, Xiao Hua's thoughts unconsciously flew. -8. Chapter 1914. The place where Qian Qinghua went missing was Linyu Town, which had nothing to do with Shihuang Town. However, both towns could be reached through Yinyuan City's teleportation formation, so it was possible that the Imperial Thunder Sect had spies in Shihuang Town. Thinking of Qian Qinghua, Xiao Hua naturally thought of everything that Qian Qinghua did to him. Xiao Hua, who had seen the cruelty of the Morning Rain Continent's cultivation world, didn't have too many complaints about Qian Qinghua. Now that he thought about it, Qian Qinghua treated him quite well. That clear flower pill that could take his life was refined by Xiao Hua when he was around the 16th level of qi refining. Of course, the medicinal effect was insignificant compared to the fire essence flame crystal. Then, Xiao Hua thought of Lu Yang's Kai family, Fairy Hong Xia and Kai Zhuoxia. Maybe I should go and pay my respects to Kai Zhuoxia. Xiao Hua's heart was a little sad. When he first entered the cultivation world of the Dawn Rain continent, Kai Zhuoxia was the first companion he traveled with. He really benefited a lot from her, but Kai Zhuoxia died young. Fate really made fools of people. If Xiao Hua was alone, he would have already gone after Xiangyang left with Yin Qinglian and Xiang Zhili. But now he had Xue Xue by his side. As a female cultivator, how could Xue Xue not have any thoughts about him and Fairy Hongxia? If he didn't want to cause any unnecessary trouble, then it was better not to mention it. Therefore, Xiao Hua smiled and said to Xue Xue, "Wife, your husband is still not familiar with the Morning Rain continent. Now that senior brother and senior sister have returned to the Imperial Thunder sect, I will listen to your instructions on how to get to Kaha Si." Xue Xue covered her mouth. She enjoyed being called wife very much. She smiled and said, "From Shihuang Town to QC, I'm afraid you'll have to accompany me all the way to the east. First, we'll have to reach the border between Shi and Ming. Then, we'll have to cross the entire Ming before we reach QC. In the country of Shi, there are many teleportation formations that can be used. Using the Shihuang Town's teleportation formation, we can return to Yinyuan City. From there, we can go to Chiyue City, Qianyu City, Haoming City, Jingpa City, Suntian City, and Tongmu City. But if we go east to Ming Kingdom, we can only go to Haoming City. After we reach Haoming City, we can only teleport to a few small towns in the east. We will need to fly there. Between the country of Shi and Ming Kingdom, there is a Mozhao Black Forest. That is one of the 10 most dangerous places in the Xiaoyu continent. Only by going through the Mozhao Black Forest can we reach Ming Kingdom. It's so far. Xiao Hua was stunned and said, "Last time when I followed Martial Uncle Jin Qing to Ming Country's Taiqing sect, it didn't seem to be this troublesome." "Okay, I'll let you know." Xue Xue covered her mouth and giggled. The Taiqing sect is located in the south of Ming Kingdom, not too far from Shi Kingdom. It is also at the edge of the Mozhao Black Forest. Besides, my husband is riding the Thunderboat, a flying artifact of the Imperial Thunder sect. Of course, it is much faster and more convenient. But if we walk the same old path, how can it be of any use to gain experience? But the Mozhao Black Forest is very dangerous. It is said that only foundation establishment and gold core cultivators can enter it. Xiao Hua frowned and said, with my husband, what is there to be afraid of?" Without Xiangyang and the others by her side, Xue Xue was not shy at all. She kept calling Xiao Hua her husband, as if Xiao Hua was really her dual cultivation partner. If I am alone, I can go to the Emojao Black Forest. But if I am with my wife, I have to think about it. Xiao Hua did not hide his love and care, holding Xue Xue's hand and said. Xue Xue nodded and said happily, we can go to the edge of the Emojao Black Forest. There is no need to go deep. I will listen to my wife's orders. Xiao Hua echoed, and then the two stepped into the transmission array. However, the moment he stepped into the transmission array, Xiao Hua hesitated. He thought that as long as he succeeded in his cultivation, he would immediately rescue Xiao Xinrue from the abyss of suffering and avenge Xiao Hongyue. Although Xiao Hua was only at the Foundation Establishment stage, his strength had surpassed the late Foundation Establishment stage and could even be compared to the early Gold Core stage. However, after careful consideration, Xiao Hua felt that his cultivation was still a little lacking, especially when he remembered the collective attack of the sect disciples in the Dark Knowledge. Xiao Hua knew that with Xiao Yuehong's cultivation in the Middle Foundation Establishment stage, there was no chance for him to escape. He was afraid that with his cultivation in the late Foundation Establishment stage, he would not be able to deal with the entire 100 Herbs sect. Let's wait a little longer. To deal with the entire 100 Herbs sect, I'm afraid I will need to be at the Middle Gold Core stage. Wait until this young master reaches the Middle Foundation Establishment stage, then I will go look for the 100 Herbs sect. Xiao Hua's footsteps paused for a moment, and then he stepped into the transmission array. Just as Xiao Hua stepped into the transmission array, the somewhat familiar-looking Middle Foundation Establishment stage cultivator he had met before had arrived at a mountain range in the Flame Forest Swamp. His vicious gaze swept over the blazing fire lake, and he said coldly, Xiao Hua, this old man has finally found you. That bitch Kaizhuoxia is already dead. This old man can't turn into a malicious spirit and seek revenge on her. Then watch this old man tear you to pieces, search your soul, and shatter your bones, so that you will never be reincarnated. Senior brother Yin Yu, the Middle Foundation Establishment stage cultivator next to him frowned and said, although this Xiao Hua is a Qi condensation stage cultivator, but he is also a disciple of the Imperial Thunder sect. Now he is with Zhenyi, and there are two Middle Foundation Establishment stage senior brothers. I'm afraid it would be inconvenient for us to act, right? This cultivator was actually Yin Yu of the Xuanyin school, and was precisely Yin Wei's blood relative. Humph, junior brother Liang Yu. Yin Yu sneered and said, this Yin only has Wei as his blood relative great-grandson. Since he was young, who knows how much effort I put into him. Originally, I wanted to wait until he reached the 10th layer of Qi condensation before looking for an opportunity to take him into my Xuanyin school. But who would have thought that he would actually be killed by that bastard Xiao Hua and that bitch Kaizhuoxia? When this Yin heard the news of Wei Er's death, it took me a great deal of effort to learn of Kaizhuoxia's name from the Yin family disciples. Then, I racked my brains to learn of Xiao Hua's name from Liu Yang's Kai family, and I even happened to learn from junior brother Shi that Xiao Hua had actually entered the Imperial Thunder sect. This Yin originally thought that I wouldn't be able to personally avenge this deep-seated hatred, but who would have thought that I would receive a message from senior brother Qian? This really is the will of the heavens. That day, this Yin merely casually mentioned it after drinking. Who would have thought that senior brother Qian would remember it, and we just happened to meet within this flame forest marsh. If this Yin doesn't seize this opportunity, in the future, when Xiao Hua reaches Foundation Establishment and his cultivation catches up to this Yan's, how will this Yin still have a chance? Senior brother Yin. It's not that Liang Yu isn't willing to accompany senior brother in taking revenge, but there's a Jindan cultivator. Liang Yu explained with a wry smile. Don't worry, junior brother Liang Yu. How can this Yin let junior brother offend a Jindan cultivator? Yin Yu chuckled and said, even if this Yin gave junior brother 10 more medicinal pills, this Yin still wouldn't let you take such a great risk. This Yin only wants to find a suitable opportunity to act after the Jindan cultivator leaves. Since senior brother Yin hasn't let hatred get to your head, Liang Yu can be at ease. Liang Yu nodded at first, but then frowned and said, the message talisman has already been sent out for so long. Why haven't I seen senior brother Qian's reply yet? Sigh, Yin Yu sighed and said, this Yin went out to gather medicinal herbs and just came back. I only just found out that senior brother Qian sent a message talisman last year and immediately invited junior brother over. I'm afraid. Senior brother has already left? Right at this moment, two familiar divine consciousnesses swept over from afar. Yinyu laughed loudly and said, "It's senior brother Qian. You've arrived." Indeed, not far away. Qian Han and Jiaming flew over, looking exhausted. The moment they saw Yinyu, they said unhappily, "Junior brother Yin, why did you only arrive today?" Yinyu immediately smiled apologetically and said, "No, this Yin didn't come because this Yin went out to gather medicinal herbs. I just came back. Oh, I see." Jiaming nodded. Junior brother Yin is a famous alchemist in our Xuanyin cult. He's very tired, so it's normal for him to go out to gather medicinal herbs. Haha. Yinyu laughed and clapped his hands, taking out a bottle of medicinal pills and handing it over. "Senior brother Qian, this is a small token of my appreciation. Please don't dislike it." Unfortunately, Qian Han didn't reach out his hand. Instead, he glanced at Jiaming and said with a bitter smile, "This Qian wanted to take this spirit pill. Unfortunately." "What?" Yinyu was shocked, his expression changing. "That bastard Xiaohua has already left Flame Forest Marsh? Could it be that he hasn't?" Qian Han hesitated and said, "Even if he has left, he can't leave." "Very good." Yinyu was overjoyed. "Then what about Zhenyi? Did he leave long ago?" "Zhenyi? I'm afraid he can't leave either," Qian Han said with a bitter smile. "Io, that's not good." Yinyu frowned and handed the medicinal pills to Qian Han. No matter what, since senior brother told this Yin about that bastard's whereabouts, this medicinal pill should belong to senior brother. Seeing that Yinyu was in the middle of the situation and didn't understand, Liangyu reminded him from outside, "Senior brother Yin, senior brother Qian means that Xiaohua has already died, right?" Yinyu was stunned at first, then he looked up to the sky and laughed. "Heaven follows man's wishes, heaven follows man's wishes, ha ha ha. I just don't know if senior brother Qian saw how that bastard died with his own eyes." Sigh, "Senior brother Qian, junior brother Yin is not an outsider. You should explain things clearly, don't talk in riddles." Jiaming sighed and said to Qian Han, "Fine, let's find a quiet place." Qian Han nodded. After Qian Han finished speaking, Yinyu finally understood. It turned out that Qian Han and Jiaming didn't catch up to Jiang Zhuqing and the others. At first, they didn't dare to send a message for fear of disturbing the Thunder Beast or disturbing Jiang Zhuqing. It wasn't until 10 days later that they sent out a summoning talisman. However, at that time, Jiang Zhuqing's corpse was covered by the Thunder Beast's blood-red seal. The summoning talisman flew in the air for a while, but couldn't find a trace. After flying back and forth, it returned to Qian Han's hands. This caused Qian Han and Jiaming to be bewildered. After all, if Jiang Zhuqing had died, the summoning talisman shouldn't have been able to fly away. Since it could fly away, it meant that he hadn't died. Since it couldn't find the direction, it must have been disturbed by a restriction. Thus, Qian Han and Jiaming searched all over the Flame Forest Mountains. However, they didn't know how many summoning talismans they had sent out in the past year, but they were all in the same situation. It wasn't until a few days ago when Xiaohua broke the Thunder Beast's blood-red seal that Qian Han's summoning talisman stopped flying. Naturally, Qian Han already knew that Jiang Zhuqing had died. Presumably, Zhenyi and the others had also lost their lives. As for Xiaohua, he had long disappeared when the Five Elements soul-capturing formation collapsed. Qian Han didn't think that an aura-refining cultivator could survive when the formation collapsed. Hearing that even a golden core cultivator like Jiang Zhuqing had died, Yinyu was relieved. However, he still felt somewhat uneasy. "So you're saying that senior brother Qian didn't personally see that bastard Xiaohua die?" -8. Chapter 1915. Qian Han said discontentedly, "Xiaohua, Li Fengzhu, Qinghao, Zhu Ming, and Li Mian all disappeared at the same time. I have Li Fengzhu's summoning talisman. When I first got separated from Master, I sent him a summoning talisman. At that time, Li Fengzhu had already died." Yes. Yinyu smiled apologetically and handed the pill over. "Since senior brother has passed the information about that fellow to me, how can I go back on my word? Senior brother, please take it." "All right." Qian Han nodded and kept the pill. It's a pity that I can't let junior brother Yin take revenge with his own hands. As long as that bastard dies, it's better than anything else. Yin Yu said hatefully. It's a pity that I haven't seen that bastard even after Xiao Hua died. That day, the disciples of the Yin clan only paid attention to Kaizhuaxia, and the people of the Kai clan had never seen Xiao Hua. Even now, I don't know what that guy looks like. Humph. What's so good about an aura-refining disciple? Qian Han sneered and described Xiao Hua's appearance. But just as Qian Han finished speaking, Yin Yu said in astonishment, "What? Xiao Hua? Xiao Hua looks like this. He's an aura-refining disciple, not a foundation-building disciple?" Of course. Qian Han frowned. How could this Qian make a mistake? Yin Yu glanced at Liang Yu. Liang Yu similarly came to a realization and said anxiously, "Then, the other disciples of the Imperial Thunder Sect?" Other disciples? Jie Ming was also stunned. He said curiously, "Aside from Zhen Yi, there's a man and a woman who seem to be dual cultivation partners. They're both middle-stage foundation-building disciples. There's also a female aura-refining disciple like Xiao Hua. Her attitude towards Xiao Hua was also very intimate." Yin Yu said anxiously, "Is there one?" "No. That baby is less than a month old." "What?" Qian Han was also greatly shocked. She practically moved in front of Yin Yu and said, You all have seen Xiao Hua? When did he see her? What do those 3 Imperial Thunder Sect disciples look like?" Naturally, it was when this Yin had just arrived at Shihuang Town. Yin Yu told him about his encounter with Xiao Hua. "No, the 2 female cultivators look the same as Xiao Hua. That Xiang Yang is obviously different." Qian Han shook her head. "Senior brother," Jie Mingzi exclaimed in surprise, "did you forget about the Thunder Beast's inner core?" Although Xiao Hua didn't say what he wanted the Thunder Beast's core for, Xiao Hua isn't of the lightning attribute. His senior brothers all have the lightning attribute, so the Thunder Beast's core. More than that, Liang Yu smiled and said, "Xiao Hua has 4 storage bags." Chase. How could Qian Han and Jie Ming not know what had happened? They shouted in unison without hesitation. Since the Imperial Thunder Sect had disciples on duty at Shihuang Town's transmission array, there was no need to talk about Xuanyan School. Although Qian Han and the others were Foundation Establishment disciples and didn't have too much authority, wasn't Yin Yu an alchemist? After sending out a summoning talisman and giving them some medicinal pills, Yin Yu obtained some information. He found out that Xiang Yang and the others were escorting 4 middle-stage Foundation Establishment disciples back to the Imperial Thunder Sect. This time, Yin Yu was extra careful and inquired about the appearances of the 6 disciples returning to the Imperial Thunder Sect. When he found out that Xiao Hua didn't return to the Imperial Thunder Sect, he couldn't help but be ecstatic. However, when he asked about Xiao Hua's whereabouts, the disciple on duty at Xuanyan School couldn't say anything. After all, Xiao Hua was an early-stage Foundation Establishment disciple and Xue was an aura-refining disciple, so it was unlikely that they would attract the attention of the disciple on duty. Later, after Yin Yu took out some rare medicinal pills, the disciple on duty returned half a day later and received some vague information. Xiao Hua was probably heading in the direction of Haoming City. As for whether he was heading to Haoming City or not, there were so many transmission array towns in between, and there were also direct flights, so who could know? After the disciple on duty at Xuanyan School left, Yin Yu looked at Qian Han and the others and said with a smile, "Senior Marshal Brothers, I have a blood feud with Xiao Hua, so I must make a trip to Haoming City. If you 3 want to return to Golden Goose Mountain Range, I'm afraid we can't go together." Qian Han glanced at Jie Ming, and the 2 of them quickly exchanged glances. Just now, Yin Yu had carefully observed the movements of the Imperial Thunder Sect's disciples, so the 2 of them naturally knew that Xiang Yang and Yin Qinglian didn't have the 4 storage pouches on their waists. All 4 storage pouches were on Xiao Hua. Qian Han and Jie Ming probably knew more about the contents of the 4 storage pouches than Yin Yu and Liang Yu. Since the storage pouches were on the body of an early-stage Foundation Establishment cultivator, how could they not covet them? Ahem, Qian Han coughed twice and said with a smile, "My master died in the Flame Forest Mountain Range. Xiao Hua, a lowly person, actually took my master's storage pouch. As his disciple, how could I not ask him for it? This trip to Haoming City, I can't not take it. Haha, that's great. Yin Yu's divine sense swept the surroundings for a moment, and he said in a low voice, since that's the case, the four of us should still travel together and kill that bastard Xiaohua. The things on his body, how about the four of us divide them equally? We'll do as junior martial brother Yin says. The three of them all had the same idea. Since they were fellow disciples of the same sect, they didn't have to worry about anything and hit it off. Of course, there were many routes to Haoming City, and they couldn't be sure which route Xiaohua took, so they could only search for him along the way. As for Xiaohua, he simply didn't know that Yin Wei, whom he killed more than 10 years ago, actually only caused trouble today. He even took Xue to leisurely pass through a small town's teleportation array, and they flew hand in hand in midair. Xue, do you think the great Tao of this world is heartless? Or is it sentimental? Xiaohua looked at the changing scenery under his feet, which was either blooming flowers or overlapping mountain ranges, and couldn't help but ask. Xue was obviously stunned, but then she pursed her lips and said with a smile, the heavenly Tao is heartless and regards all things as straw dogs. This is common knowledge in cultivation. Why do you ask? Xiaohua said with a smile, look at eldest senior martial brother. He was loyal and considerate all his life, but because of my master in the 10,000 Thunder Valley, his Tao foundation was damaged, and he couldn't build his foundation for 60 years, suffering the ridicule of others. After building his foundation, his lifespan was shortened, and he couldn't advance for a long time. If it was someone else, I'm afraid they would have long given up, or even cursed the heavens for being unfair, but eldest senior martial brother still cultivated diligently and faced people with a smile. Now, on this trip to the Flame Forest Mountains, not only was his Tao foundation repaired, even Xiang Zhili was born. What eldest senior martial brother said for many years. I'm afraid his self-deprecating words will come true. Tell me, isn't this a gift from the heavenly Tao? What husband said is somewhat partial. Xue shook her head slightly. There are many unjust things in this world, and eldest senior martial brother is just one of them. He could achieve perfection. To be honest, it's all thanks to husband. If it wasn't for husband's help, he could only end up dying of old age in the blood-colored seal. As for senior martial sister and Xiang Zhili, they're also ordinary. How could there be a distracted Xiang Zhili? What about the others besides eldest senior martial brother? From what husband knows, how many people have achieved perfection? That's right, the heavenly Tao is unpredictable, and not something we can predict. Husband still hopes that fairness under the heavenly Tao can become justice. Xiaohua sighed. At this moment, Xiaohua's expression suddenly changed again, and he used his hand to pull Xue. -8. Chapter 1916. Xiaohua suddenly sensed some changes in the starry sky of heavenly Tao in the space. He hurriedly pulled Xue's hand and said anxiously, Wife, your husband has gained some insights. Go into seclusion with me for a few days. How could Xue not be happy to see Xiaohua's cultivation progress again? Xiaohua landed in midair and found a clean cave. After setting up the rabbit array, the two of them cultivated in seclusion in the cave. Xiaohua sat cross-legged, his mind entering the space. He saw the young thunder beast curled up with its legs curled up, sparkling blue lightning hovering above it. It was sleeping soundly. Goldie also used its big tail to cover itself, its small eyebrows slightly furrowed. It was also sleeping soundly. Only Little Silver was on top of the extremely exuberant spirit grass, sometimes nibbling and sometimes playing. It was very leisurely and carefree. Little Silver seemed to sense Xiaohua's mind. Its little tail curled around the stem of a spirit grass, and its two little front paws cupped together. Its two bright little eyes looked around as if it was looking for Xiaohua. Hee. Xiaohua's gaze swept over everything in the space, and his mind immediately soared high into the sky. The original engravings of the starry sky of heavenly Tao, which had been brought in by the origin of fire, became even clearer. At that moment, because of some of Xiaohua's insights, there were some changes. Xiaohua's mind welcomed the trajectory of the starry sky, and he let it go limitlessly as he carefully sensed the changes in it. Xiaohua sat there for 100 days. There were no fluctuations in the spirit chi of heaven and earth on his body, nor was there any flow of magic power like when he usually cultivated. Shue was very surprised and couldn't help frowning. What kind of cultivation is this? But just as Shue was feeling a little anxious, she saw that Xiaohua, who was sitting upright, had a change. Xiaohua actually started to fade away, as if he was about to fade into the surroundings. But just as Xiaohua was about to disappear, his entire silhouette became clear again, and when it was incomparably clear, it slowly expanded, as if it was about to fill the entire world. When it reached an extreme, it then started to shrink and fade away. This cycle repeated 360 times before it returned to normal. At that moment, Shue felt that the true qi in her meridians had also changed slightly following Xiaohua's changes. It seemed to be faintly condensing and faintly dispersing, as if the foundation establishment stage was right in front of her. But how could Shue care whether she reached the foundation establishment stage or not? All of her care and concern was on Xiaohua. However, when she looked at Xiaohua, Shue had an extremely strange feeling. She clearly knew that Xiaohua was sitting in front of her, yet Shue felt that Xiaohua did not exist. It was truly an empty space. Shue stared at Xiaohua and bit her lip. She came from a cultivation family and had dabbled in many things. However, she had never heard of Xiaohua's current situation. She wanted to confirm her guess, but she was also afraid of disturbing Xiaohua's cultivation, so she endured it. After a moment, she released her divine sense and carefully scanned the area. Ah! Shue almost jumped up. Xiaohua really wasn't there. Don't let anything happen. Shue was restless. Her previous calmness was nowhere to be seen. If he has gone berserk, can he be awakened now? What if my dear Xiao hasn't turned into a devil, and I've disturbed his cultivation by touching him? After thinking for the time it took to eat a meal, and her divine sense had scanned Xiaohua's empty image countless times, Shue finally stood up, lightly walked in front of Xiaohua, raised her hand, and very carefully pushed. Ouch! Shue was immediately dumbfounded. Her push actually hit nothing, and her hand stabbed into Xiaohua's back. Husband! Shue cried out in a sobbing voice. She was extremely regretful that she did not wake Xiaohua up earlier. Wife, what's wrong? Just as Shue cried out, Xiaohua's voice rang out. That voice was incomparably heavenly, and even had a slight rumbling of thunder. However, when it fell into Shue's ears, it was truly an indescribable pleasant surprise. My dear Xiao. Seeing Xiaohua's puzzled and smiling gaze, Shue had long forgotten everything. She immediately threw herself at him. Unexpectedly, what welcomed her was still the extremely familiar warm embrace. Shue hugged Xiaohua with all her strength, as if she wanted to use all the strength in her body. She tightly hugged the thing she had already lost in her arms. Shue, what's wrong with you? Xiaohua felt a little strange and asked softly. No, nothing. Shue's face had some tears. It was unknown whether they were tears of joy or emotions. I've been cold to you these days. Xiaohua somewhat understood and hugged Shue affectionately for half a day. When Shue's face and ears were red, Xiaohua smiled and said, It's really been hard on you, my wife. It's also been hard on me. Shue shyly blinked her eyes and whispered, Husband, give me the jade slip that this lowly concubine gave you. Oh, does my wife want me to see it? Xiaohua waved his hand and took out the pink jade slip. However, after Shue took it, she only wrote a few things inside and returned it to Xiaohua. Xiaohua took it and was very confused. Wife, what are you doing? Although I didn't dual cultivate with you, what can I say? Why are you being so secretive? Shue said with a sly smile, Husband, with Sister Hongxia in front, how can this lowly concubine compare with her? If this lowly concubine doesn't have any secrets in front of you, how can you cherish this lowly concubine? It can't be. Xiaohua didn't think that Shue would have such thoughts. She actually wanted to compete for his favor. How could Shue not see it? She hurriedly explained, Husband, don't think too much. This lowly concubine just feels that there are some things that are not the right time to say. When the time is ripe, even if husband doesn't mention it, This lowly concubine will tell husband. So it's like this. Xiao Hua was somewhat skeptical. Husband, have you finished cultivating? Xue Xue changed the topic. Xiao Hua thought for a moment and said with a smile, Not yet. Wife, wait a few more days. Hee, it doesn't matter, Xue Xue said with a smile. You can cultivate for as long as you want. This lowly concubine is not in a hurry. Looking at Xue Xue's appearance of a virtuous wife and loving mother, Xiao Hua's heart was warm. To be honest, helping Xue Xue to build her foundation was just a matter of a hammer. However, Xiao Hua faintly felt that helping others to build their foundation was always going against the heavens. It wasn't something that would happen naturally. It might not be harmless to other people's future cultivation. Therefore, last time he didn't help Sun Shu and Qin to build their foundation. This time, he also didn't have the intention to help Xue Xue. Wife, stay away from this husband. Finally, use some magic tool to protect yourself, Xiao Hua said with a smile. Xue Xue was shocked. Oh, husband, when you cultivate, will there be a big movement? That's not necessarily true. Xiao Hua didn't hide it and said, It's just the first time cultivating after building my foundation. I don't know what will happen. The first time cultivating after building your foundation? Xue Xue didn't understand. However, she still walked to the farthest corner of the cave and threw out a protective yellow talisman. Seeing that Xue Xue didn't have a protective magic tool, Xiao Hua's heart was moved. In the 4 storage pouches that Xiangyang gave him, there were a lot of spirit stones and medicinal pills. There were also magic tools and cultivation methods. Although he didn't carefully count them and threw them into the space, he still roughly checked them with his divine sense. If he couldn't use the magic tools, wouldn't he be able to give them to Xue Xue? Presumably, Xiao Hua waved his hand and took out a storage pouch. He casually looked at it and clapped his hand. A palm-sized magic tool that looked like a fluttering butterfly appeared in midair. Wife, this seems to be a defensive magic tool. You should take it. Take advantage of this time when your husband is cultivating. Why don't you refine it? Don't tell your husband that you don't know how to refine it. Hee, you only took it out now. Xue Xue pouted, seemingly rebuking him. This concubine thought that when eldest senior brother gave it to you, you would pick one for this concubine. You actually made this concubine wait for the stars and the moon until today. That, Xiao Hua was really anxious. He really didn't think too much about it. Seeing that Xiao Hua was about to argue, Xue Xue looked at his storage pouch and said, Husband, at this time, you still don't want to give this concubine one of the 4 storage pouches? Of course, Xiao Hua immediately realized. That's right, he was used to being stingy. He really didn't think about it. He hurriedly handed the storage pouch to Xue Xue and took out another one. He smiled apologetically and said, Wife, what's yours is yours. I'm just taking care of it for you. That's right. Xue Xue nodded and said, This concubine really likes this attitude. However, since you said so, what's yours is mine. You can take care of it for now. Then, you can take care of it for now. When this concubine needs it, I'll ask you for it. As she spoke, she took the butterfly magic tool and playfully winked at Xiao Hua. Xiao Hua smiled knowingly and nodded slightly. He put the 2 storage pouches into the space again. Seeing Xiao Hua make the 2 storage pouches disappear very strangely, Xue Xue turned a blind eye. She sat down cross-legged and immersed her divine sense into the magic tool, preparing to refine it. Seeing this, Xiao Hua naturally sat beside her with a smile and released his divine sense to protect Xue Xue. After waiting for 3 days, a group of fluttering butterflies flew out from the magic tool and fluttered around Xue Xue's body, tightly protecting her. Xiao Hua praised, a beauty like jade, butterflies like orchids. This magic tool should be called Butterfly Orchid. Haha, thank you husband for giving it a name. Xue Xue opened her eyes and said, From now on, this magic tool will be called Butterfly Orchid. Great. Xiao Hua smiled and said, Wife, watch carefully. This husband is going to start cultivating. As he spoke, Xiao Hua clapped his hand, and a drop of black earth crystal Yao milk was taken out by him. Naturally, this time Xiao Hua didn't use any magic power to take out the earth crystal Yao milk like the first time. Instead, he wrapped it with a layer of magic power. Soon after, Xiao Hua silently recited the refining method of the earth crystal Yao milk in his heart and clapped his hand, just like the fire essence flame crystal, on his shoulder. As soon as the earth crystal Yao milk entered Xiao Hua's arm, a layer of black mist immediately spread out from his arm. In just a moment, Xiao Hua's entire body was shrouded inside. Then, the black mist began to condense again, like a layer of solid mud, sealing Xiao Hua's entire body inside. Husband. Seeing Xiao Hua actually become like this, although Xue Xue was fully prepared, she still turned pale with fright. P.S. HTTP Forum. Chidian. Come threadetailnu. ASPX? Thread ID equals 171993010. It was a suggestion made by a book friend in the book review section. Here, the third flower wants to express some thoughts. Nowadays, there are too many cultivators who seek advantages and avoid disadvantages in web novels. Each and every one of them is selfish, or they act according to their abilities. Why is this so? The third flower feels that this is because writers are looking for the so-called human nature. They want to write to a high level and write to a profound level. But in reality, why do all the demonic beasts have to transform into human form? Why is it that among all the cultivation techniques, human cultivation is the smoothest and fastest? Since this is the care of the heavens, then human nature cannot be as cruel, selfish, heartless, and unjust as beasts. People must use human nature with love and affection to repay the heavens. Only this kind of person can have success in cultivation and obtain the true essence of cultivation, and not simply increase one's magic power or realm. What is human nature? It is truly profound and has already been written countless times by countless people. In the future, it will still be written for who knows how many years. It can be seen how complex human nature is. Let others write about the dark human nature. The third flower still likes positive and joyful human nature. In addition, although human nature has an ugly side, there is no need to infinitely magnify it and roar in every place, making people feel that there is no sunlight in this world. The third flower's living environment and growth experience may be different from Wang Yu's, so his perspective on problems was naturally different. Thus, the characters he wrote were also completely different. If Xiao Hua did not help Xiang Yang fight over the Thunder Beast's inner core, then he would not be Xiao Hua, but Hanli. Hee, I haven't nagged for a long time. Everyone, please forgive me. These words are all free of charge. -8. Chapter 1917. Xue Xue, don't worry. At this moment, Xiao Hua's voice came. Your husband is practicing a secret technique. Just wait. Then, with a clear cry, Xiao Hua's phoenix Dharma body came out of the black gas, spread its wings and flew in the air. Above the phoenix Dharma body, there was also a layer of faint, solid black gas entwining. Okay. Hearing Xiao Hua's voice and seeing the phoenix Dharma body, Xue Xue felt relieved. She stared at the black statue like Xiao Hua for several days before starting her own practice. As soon as the earth crystal Yao milk entered Xiao Hua's body, it immediately turned into a flood of earth element spiritual energy, rushing into Xiao Hua's body. Xiao Hua hurriedly used the secret technique of Sun Shu to refine the Zhongyao milk, trying his best to absorb this huge amount of earth element spiritual energy into his meridians. However, at this moment, just as Xiao Hua had expected, the 13200 small dots in his physical body, the 13200 small dots in the Phoenix celestial body, his bones, and meridians all began to appear one after another, absorbing this huge amount of Earth-type spiritual energy, leaving Xiao Hua with only 30% of it. Another 100 days passed, and the black gas around Xiao Hua's body began to gradually fade. Finally, it was absorbed back into his body and disappeared. By now, that drop of earth crystal Yao milk had been completely absorbed by Xiao Hua's meridians, turning into tens of thousands of tiny black spots, which were visible to the naked eye, floating in Xiao Hua's meridians. If Xiao Hua could refine all of these tiny black spots into his energy, presumably, his power would be able to improve by another level. Boom, Xiao Hua's body moved slightly, and the Phoenix Dharma body that had been coiled above his head flapped its wings. The black gas around the Dharma body had faded a lot, but it seemed that there was still a lot that had not been refined. However, after 100 days of hard work, the Phoenix Dharma body had become more solid. After Xiaohua absorbed the Phoenix celestial body back into his body, he slightly released his divine sense. He couldn't help but feel slightly happy. Previously, Xiaohua's divine sense could only cover a distance of several tens of li. Although it was a lot more than the 10 li of Foundation establishment, it was still a lot less than the 100 li of Jindan. But now, after refining the earth crystal Yao milk into his meridians, his divine sense had increased by another 10 li. Needless to say, his cultivation had increased by a lot. Go! Xiaohua opened his mouth again, and the execution dream flew out. It turned into 8 rays of sword light and sat cross-legged in the cave. Split! Xiaohua shouted again. The 8 rays of sword light flashed and split into 16 rays of green light. Haha, that's great. Xiaohua was pleasantly surprised. He hadn't expected that sword plays the world, which hadn't made any progress all this time, would also make progress as his realm and divine sense increased. Divide again. Xiaohua felt that he still had some strength left in his heart, so he unconsciously shouted again. Sure enough, the 16 sword lights swayed again, and with great difficulty, they turned into 32 green lights. After practicing sword plays the world for a while under the 32 sword lights, Xiaohua put away the execution dream and stood up. Seeing Xiaohua stand up, Shui smiled and also put away her cultivation. She scanned with her divine sense and said in surprise, "Husband, isn't your cultivation too fast? Just 200 days, plus the 1 year after Foundation establishment. You've only cultivated for 2 years. Why do I feel like you've already been in Foundation establishment for more than 10 years? Haha." Xiaohua laughed and said, "How can it be as fast as you think? It's just that your husband's divine sense is slightly stronger." Maybe. Shui only cared about whether Xiaohua was safe or not. As for the level of cultivation, she didn't care too much at this time. "Let's go." Xiaohua put away the rabbit formation and said with a smile, "For your husband's cultivation, I've already delayed your time to look at the sea. It's your husband's fault." Hee. Knowing your mistakes is the greatest virtue. Shui pursed her lips and said, "Then why aren't we hurrying?" So Xiaohua took Shui's hand and rushed towards Ming Kingdom at a leisurely pace. At the border between the state of Shi and the state of Ming, not far from the Majiao Black Forest, Yin Yu and the others were standing in midair. Yin Yu frowned and said, "Senior Marshal Brother Qian, didn't Xiaohua go to Haoming City? Why haven't we seen any traces of the two of them after chasing them here?" "Yes, we couldn't find them in Haoming City at all. We also couldn't find any traces of them at the various teleportation arrays. It's as if the two of them disappeared into thin air." Qian Han also said in distress, "If we continue forward, we'll reach Majiao Black Forest. After passing through this dangerous place, we should be in Ming Kingdom. The two of them went out to train. They wouldn't go to Ming Kingdom, right?" Jiaming looked at the Majiao Black Forest in the distance, which was like a monster lying on the ground, and said hesitantly. Liang Yu looked at the three of them and said slowly, "Unless the two of them didn't come to Haoming City, the 4 of us will search separately. We won't miss such a large area. We'll go back to Haoming City first. After resting for a few days, we'll go back to search." Yin Yu gritted his teeth and said, "This bastard cut off my bloodline. We're absolutely irreconcilable. I must kill this bastard with my own hands." Ahem, Qian Han coughed twice and said, "Xiaoyu continent is so big. Since this bastard didn't come to Haoming City, who knows where he went? Junior brother Yin may not be able to find this bastard even if we go back to search. In fact, we should have asked our fellow disciples in Shihuang Town to kill Xiang Yang, Yin Qinglian, and the others who returned to Yulei sect. Humph, senior brother Qian, are you doubting my choice that day?" Yin Yu sneered and said angrily. Qian Han was about to refute, but Jiaming laughed and said, "Look at what junior brother Yin said. In fact, I had the same idea that day, but I saw that junior brother Yin had a blood feud with Xiaohua. That's why we rushed to Haoming City to look for Xiaohua. If junior brother Yin accuses us like this, we really have nothing to say." Yin Yu knew that this matter couldn't be exposed, let alone turned hostile, so he quickly said with a smile, "I spoke rashly because I was impatient. Let's go. We'll go to Haoming City." I'll prepare a banquet to apologize. Let's take a rest first, and then we'll discuss what to do. Qian Han and the others naturally turned their anger into joy and returned to Haoming City together. More than half a year later, Xiaohua and Shui appeared in a small town not far from Haoming City. This small town was located on the side of the river, and there were majestic mountains on all sides. The river was turbulent all the way, but it suddenly slowed down here. Countless fish in the water reproduced here, and the aquatic products were abundant. Not only cultivators came and went here, but there were also many mortals living here. Therefore, the water and mountains were beautiful, and the water birds were soaring. It was really a beautiful scene out of this world. The riverside restaurant that Xiaohua and Shui stepped into was opened by a mortal. When they saw Xiaohua and Shui walking in hand, the waiter, who had been waiting at the door, immediately came forward and called out respectfully, "Welcome to my cold river house, Senior Immortal and Fairy. Please follow me upstairs." "Yes, please lead the way." Xiaohua nodded slightly and followed the waiter into the cold river house. Senior Immortals in the private rooms on the 4th floor. The waiter was very happy and shouted loudly as he led the way. Hearing that Senior Immortals were coming, the short and fat shopkeeper standing behind the counter couldn't stand still anymore. He quickly walked out from behind and waited respectfully. Xiaohua entered the cold river house and looked around. He saw that there were more than a dozen round tables in the restaurant that was about 40 to 50 feet in size. It was noon, and there were many people eating. The noisy hall immediately became silent when they heard that Senior Immortals were coming. Dozens of pairs of eyes were looking at Xiaohua and Shui with respect and envy. Shui frowned slightly, obviously unhappy. She only looked at the stairs in front of her and ignored the mortals. Xiaohua smiled at everyone and even nodded slightly. -8. Chapter 1918. Welcome, Immortals. When the shopkeeper saw Shui's celestial demeanor, he knew that the waiter was right. He bowed respectfully and said, "I am Han Jiang, the shopkeeper of this restaurant. Please come upstairs, Immortals." And Shui didn't comment and stepped on the stairs. Xiaohua fell behind Shui and said with a smile, "Thank you, shopkeeper Han." When Han Jiang heard this, he was flattered and said with an apologetic smile, "Immortals coming is already my humble restaurant's honor. Immortals, please." In, Xiaohua asked at the side of the stairs, "Shopkeeper Han, is Cold River Restaurant's business good?" Business? Han Jiang seemed to be very surprised by Xiaohua's question and almost forgot himself. He immediately said with an apologetic smile, So, barely making a living, barely making a living." Hee. Xiaohua smiled. He pointed at the fishing boats on the river, as well as the passers-by, and said with a smile, "This is a paradise. All the passers-by are resting here. Even I, a cultivator, have to stop when I see such beautiful scenery. How can your Cold River House's business not be good?" Hee. Immortals really understand the people's feelings. What you said makes sense. Han Jiang's fat face was filled with a charming smile. When Xiaohua saw this, he didn't ask any more questions and quickly went up to the 4th floor. The 2nd and 3rd floors were obviously much less crowded. Moreover, they all seemed to have some status or were refined scholars. It was much quieter. When these people heard footsteps coming up the stairs, they all raised their eyes. However, when they saw the two immortal-like people and the respectful Han Jiang, they immediately understood. Therefore, their gazes became the same as the diners on the 1st floor, filled with fear. "Immortals, my humble restaurant is divided into 4 floors. Only the top floor is prepared for immortals. The other 3 floors are for us mortals." Seeing Shui frown again, Han Jiang didn't dare to be negligent and quickly explained, "There are already a few immortals on the 4th floor enjoying the scenery. Perhaps they are familiar with fellow Taoists." Haha, Xiaohua smiled. He clapped his hand and took out a spiritual stone. He gave it to Han Jiang and said, "We came from afar, so we won't have any friends that we know. Also, we came here to rest and enjoy the scenery. This is a spiritual stone. I wonder if shopkeeper Han will accept it?" "Withdraw, withdraw." Han Jiang's eyes fell on the sparkling and translucent spirit stone, and a trace of greed appeared in his eyes. He immediately took it and nodded vigorously. That's good. Find some fresh fruits and bring them up. If there are any delicious wines, bring some too, Xiaohua said as he went up to the fourth floor. Sure enough, just as Hanjiang had said, the fourth floor was even bigger than the first floor. All four sides were hollow, with 3 sides facing the river. There were only 3 huge tables in the spacious pavilion, and these 3 tables were placed on the side facing the river. At this moment, there were already several qi condensation cultivators sitting in the middle facing the river. They were holding wine cups and looking at the beautiful scenery while shaking their heads and talking about something. Hearing Xiaohua's voice and the footsteps of the shopkeeper, these cultivators very casually turned their heads to look. First, they saw Shue's beautiful appearance and peak qi condensation cultivation. They were all shocked. They looked at each other and were about to stand up. However, when Xiaohua walked up, they didn't dare to hesitate and immediately jumped up from their chairs. They bowed and saluted. Greetings, senior. Xiaohua looked at these 5 cultivators. There were 3 men and 2 women. They were all around the 10th layer of qi condensation. Seeing that they had similar appearances, Xiaohua knew that they were probably disciples from a cultivation family that came out to experience the world. Thus, he smiled and waved his sleeve. You can sit as you please. Yes, the oldest disciple respectfully replied. Xiaohua looked at them and was about to walk to the table at the side. The oldest disciple quickly pointed at his seat and said, Senior, this place is the best. Senior, please come here and sit. No need. Xiaohua said with a smile. Just wait and enjoy. I and my lover will be right next to you. Hearing Xiaohua call her lover in front of strangers, Shue's face slightly reddened. Even her head slightly drooped. She followed Xiaohua to the table at the side like a little girl. Yes, we will listen to senior's instructions. The oldest disciple could only respectfully reply. Seeing the group of disciples respectfully addressing Xiaohua as senior, Han Jiang was happy and at the same time a bit afraid. He only thought that Xiaohua was young and would have the same status as these disciples. How could he have known that Xiaohua was a senior? How could he not know how powerful Xiaohua was? Moreover, powerful seniors mostly had strange tempers. If he wasn't careful, he could suffer a calamity. Why aren't you taking out all the specialties of Cold River House? The oldest disciple saw that Han Jiang was in a daze and immediately scolded. If senior isn't satisfied, don't blame me. Cough, cough. Xiaohua coughed and said, Fellow Taoist, don't scare shopkeeper Han. Sit down. I will only stay for a while. Yes, senior. Please do as you wish. That disciple shrunk his neck and raised his head to signal the other 4 to sit down. Soon after, Xiaohua said warmly, Shopkeeper Han, go down and prepare. Yes, I will come right away. Han Jiang seemed to have woken up from a dream and promptly rolled down from the 4th floor. After Han Jiang left, the entire 4th floor regained its tranquility. The 5 aura refining cultivators who were gesticulating and laughing nonstop were now all obedient. They obediently sat on their respective chairs with their heads lowered, looking at the fresh fruits and delicacies in front of them. Alas, Xiaohua sighed. He looked at Shui beside him somewhat helplessly and transmitted his voice. It was originally a good atmosphere, but it was ruined by me, a foundation-building senior. These aura refining aristocratic family's disciples are too reserved. Shui disagreed and also transmitted her voice. You're a foundation-building senior, so they should naturally be respectful in front of you. If they don't respect you and cause trouble, then they wouldn't be disciples of aristocratic families. But wouldn't that make them lose a bit of their spirit? Lose the vigor of young people? Xiaohua smiled bitterly. He thought back to that day in Flame Forest Swamp when he argued with Zhenyi, Xiangmin, and the others, and his eldest martial brother kept his head down and didn't dare to say anything. Wasn't that exactly the case? Forget it, Xiaohua raised his head and said, Which aristocratic family's disciples are you? Reporting to Senior, Junior is from Imo Cloud Village's Chong clan. The eldest disciple promptly stood up and said respectfully, Ugh. Xiaohua saw that the disciple didn't say anything more or less and was abnormally obedient in his introduction. He couldn't help but smile bitterly. His gaze swept over them and he asked again, What are your names? Reporting to senior, junior is called Chang Li Hao. Sure enough, after the eldest disciple finished speaking, he sat down obediently. Then the other 2 men and 2 women reported their names in order of age. They were Chang Li Min, Chang Li Qiang, Chang Yulian, and Chang Xuemei. Seeing that they were so obedient, Xiaohua also felt a bit awkward in his heart. He didn't say anything else and turned his head to look at Xue Xue with a smile. He pointed his finger and said, "Wife, look at that fishing boat in the river. Why are there so many birds standing on the side of the boat?" Before Xue Xue could say anything, the female cultivator named Chang Yulian not far away laughed out loud. "Lianer." Chang Limin was shocked and hurriedly scolded. Quickly apologized to senior. Senior. Chang Yulian immediately stood up. She was very frightened and wanted to apologize. But when Xiaohua heard her laugh, he immediately knew he was wrong. He had always been modest and didn't think much of it. He waved his hand and said, "Little girl, what's the matter with these birds? Come here and explain to me." Chang Yulian's small face was full of excitement. She trotted to Xiaohua's side. After bowing, she respectfully said, "Senior is talking about cormorants, not birds. Senior, look, there is a thin rope around the cormorant's neck. It was made by a fisherman. Cormorants are good at swimming and live by eating fish. The fisherman tied the cormorant's neck like this. The cormorant couldn't eat the fish it caught, so it could only be stuck in its throat. The fisherman only needed to stretch out his hand and pinch the fish out." "Oh, there is such a fishing method?" Xiaohua was surprised. In his memory, it seemed to be something like fishing nets. After Chang Yulian finished speaking, he carefully looked again. Sure enough, it was like this. This fisherman, he really reaped without sowing. Xiaohua clapped his hands and laughed. It's just a pity for the cormorant. It worked hard for nothing and became a wedding dress for others. Xue Xue curled her lips and said, "I'll let the 2 seniors know." Chang Yulian smiled apologetically and said, "In the cold river, there are only thumb-sized fish. If it was a fishing net, I'm afraid the harvest would be very little. This junior has been used to seeing cormorants fishing since young, so I didn't think much of it." "That's right. Under the heavenly Tao, everyone has their own opportunities. As long as you can see your own path, that is the path to heaven," Xiaohua said with a smile. Unfortunately, not only did Chang Yulian not understand these words, even Xue Xue was confused. Just as Xue Xue was about to say something, the shopkeeper of the Cold River House, Han Jiang, personally came up with a large plate of fresh fruits. Looking at the sweat on Han Jiang's forehead, it seemed that the fresh fruits were very heavy. Han Jiang put the plate of fruits on the table and said respectfully, "Immortal Senior, please eat." Thank you for your trouble, shopkeeper Han." Xiaohua smiled and nodded. Han Jiang was even more flattered. Chang Yulian looked at Xiaohua with interest. It seemed that she had never seen a senior so polite to a secular person. Although fresh fruits were delicious, they couldn't be compared to spirit fruits. Xiaohua ate a few and felt a little bored. Han Jiang saw that Xiaohua's face didn't have any joy, so he quickly smiled apologetically and said, "Immortal Senior, just now, a fisherman sent over a special cabbage from the cold river. I wonder if Immortal Senior wants to use it?" "Cabbage?" Xiaohua was stunned and said curiously, "This thing is often found in the mortal world. Even if it's a special feature of your cold river, what's so strange about it?" When Chang Yulian heard the word cabbage, her face also froze. Then she heard Xiaohua's question and knew that Xiaohua had misunderstood. She quickly said to Han Jiang, "Shopkeeper Han, since there is such a precious thing, why ask? Quickly make it and send it up." Yes, yes." When Han Jiang heard, he quickly rolled down the stairs. -8. Chapter 1919. Hearing Chang Yulian say that the cabbage was a rare thing, Xiaohua naturally knew that he was wrong again, so he didn't say anything and just looked at Chang Yulian with a smile. Sure enough, Chang Yulian whispered, "Senior, this cabbage is not an ordinary dish. It is a rare fish in the Han River." Xue Xue was surprised and asked, "Since it is a fish, why is it called a dish? And it is just a fish, how is it rare?" Senior, this fish didn't exist tens of thousands of years ago. Because of a love story of life and death, it appeared in the Han River. And it is said that this fish only appears on the 15th day of every month, so it is very rare. Chang Yulian smiled and said, "This fish is really delicious. It doesn't need any seasoning at all, just steaming it. Even if I am a cultivator, I will savor it for a long time after eating it." "Really? What kind of sad story is it? Can you tell me?" Shue Shue was curious and asked anxiously. "Hee, Miss Yulian must be thirsty. Eat a spiritual fruit first, then we can talk." Xiaohua smiled and took out a palm-sized spiritual fruit from the space and handed it to Chang Yulian. Chang Yulian took it and said with a smile, "Thank you, senior." After that, she put it in her mouth and ate it in small bites. Who knew that when this unknown spiritual fruit entered her mouth, it immediately turned into a gentle spiritual power and rushed into Chang Yulian's meridians. Chang Yulian's face was full of joy. She didn't dare to neglect it and immediately sat cross-legged with her palms facing the sky. Chang Lihao and the others were surprised when they saw Chang Yulian's strange movements. But when they saw her familiar method of cultivation, they immediately showed admiration on their faces. After a few minutes, Chang Yulian opened her eyes and got up from the ground. She bowed and said, "Thank you, senior." She knew in her heart that although it was only a few minutes of cultivation and the spiritual fruit didn't have much spiritual power, this spiritual fruit seemed to be a bit special. The power to nourish the meridians was far greater than the spiritual power in her body. She was afraid that she would benefit a lot in the future. "Hee, it's okay. Tell me the story." Actually, Xiaohua himself didn't know what this spirit fruit was. He had a lot of it in his space, so he just casually took out one. "Yes." Chang Yulian chose her words carefully and said, "Tens of thousands of years ago, there was a Zionist family near Han River. This family was very famous in the country of Shi. They had a direct descendant who was a girl. She was talented and beautiful, and she reached the 12th layer of Qi refining before the age of 20. She was known as the most promising female cultivator in the country of Shi. However, such a rising star in the world of cultivators fell in love with a poor scholar surnamed Yu, who was studying in an ancient temple on the banks of the Han River. Because of love, she gave birth to an inner demon, which prevented her from making any progress. She couldn't even enter the building foundation stage from the age of 20 to the age of 30. She didn't even seize the opportunity to enter a cultivator's sect. In the beginning, the cultivation family thought that the female cultivator had encountered difficulties in her cultivation, so they tried every possible means to improve her cultivation. But in the end, they found out what the problem was. "Senior, you should know that as cultivators, how can we marry a mortal, even delaying his cultivation for the sake of mortals? If she didn't cut off this knot in her heart, she would never be able to enter the building foundation stage." As a result, the family head of the cultivation clan was enraged and wanted to capture Scholar Yu and kill him on the spot. However, he was afraid that the female cultivator would hate him and leave the clan. In the future, not only would her cultivation not improve, she would also not recognize the sect. The family head thought hard for several days and finally came up with a vicious plan. On the 15th day of the 7th month, he used the name of the female cultivator to bring the scholar surnamed Yu to the shoals of the Han River. Then, he used a spell to raise the water level of the Han River. Because the scholar kept his promise, he didn't leave even when a fishing boat passed by. He was drowned to death. Shue Shue's expression changed and she said, Then what about the female cultivator? How did she find out about this? Since she knew, wouldn't she be exposed?" "Senior, you should know that the scholar surnamed Yu was easy to trick. The family head used the female cultivator's name to invite the scholar surnamed Yu, and then had the scholar write a letter to invite the female cultivator. In the female cultivator's eyes, wouldn't she think that the scholar surnamed Yu was the one who invited her?" Chang Yulian smiled and said, "On the 15th day of the 7th month, the family head only needed to call the female cultivator over and give her a few instructions to stall for time. How long would it take for this vicious plan to disappear?" "Indeed." Shue Shue glanced at Xiaohua with a silent expression. When the female cultivator came out from the family head's place, she saw the water level of the Han River rise and thought of the place the scholar surnamed Yu had arranged. She immediately felt that something was wrong. When she flew to the shoals of the Han River, there was no sign of the shoals. Thus, the female cultivator flew to the ancient temple to search. Then, she followed the river downstream and finally found the scholar surnamed Yu's corpse 15 kilometers away. The scholar surnamed Yu's face was calm even in death. He actually said that there was a blood letter in his bosom. What was written? Shue Shue anxiously asked. When the water comes, I will wait for you in the water. When the fire comes, I will wait for you in the ashes. Chang Yulian whispered. Sigh. Xiao Hua sighed. The scholar surnamed Yu was so infatuated with the world. That's right. When the female cultivator finished reading it, she was filled with great sorrow and shouted, Yu, I have wasted your life. Today, I will follow you into the water. Chang Yulian continued. Thus, the female cultivator sealed her magic power and jumped into the Han River. At that moment, thunder roared and the entire Han River overflowed with brilliance. From then on the 15th day of every month, a pure white, almost transparent fish would swim out of the Han River. Because the scholar surnamed Yu called the female cultivator Little Cabbage, the fisherman by the river also called the fish Little Cabbage. Phew, Xiao Hua let out a long sigh. He clearly felt that there were some flaws in this story, but he still felt sad. He looked at Shue Shue again and saw tears flickering in his eyes. Shue Shue sadly said, There are always joys and sorrows in this world. I don't know when all the lovers in this world will be together. You will, my wife. Xiao Hua held her hand and said, It is precisely because of this love that this world becomes beautiful. And this beautiful love is also the manifestation of warmth in this world. But at this moment, Chang Yulian whispered, All lovers, no matter if they are mortals or cultivators, as long as they come to the side of the Han River, they will eat the little cabbage as an auspicious omen. Moreover, there are only 2 little cabbages every month. Senior actually managed to come across them today. This junior will go and take a look. Why is the shopkeeper so slow? Wait. Shue Shue's expression changed greatly and anxiously said, Husband, quickly go and stop the shopkeeper. Why is he still eating such a pitiful little cabbage? -8. Chapter 1920. Yes, at the same time, Xiaohua also thought of this. With a sweep of his divine sense, he suddenly flew up and quickly rushed down the cold river house. If it was flying, Xiaohua's speed was fast, but getting up from the chair, flying out and flying down again, this was a few turns. How could Chang Yulian not be surprised? But before she could recover from her shock, Xiaohua flew back with the big water basin in his hand. He smiled and said, Fortunately, the fisherman was bargaining with Shopkeeper Han. Shopkeeper Han was just about to kill it. If he was a bit later, this little cabbage would have died. Thank you, husband. Shue Shue finally smiled. Senior's cultivation is profound. This junior really admires it. Chang Yulian said respectfully. When Shue Shue stood up and lowered her head to look at the fish in the basin, she couldn't help but be a little moved. She saw that in the basin, there was a pure white, almost transparent fish. It swayed its tail like a dress and swam around in the clear water. Its posture was so graceful, just like a young girl dancing in the water. And on the forehead of the fish, there was a red round dot, which was especially eye-catching. Immortal Elder, Immortal Elder. At the stairs, Shopkeeper Han's panting voice sounded, that little cabbage was. But when Han Jiang saw the big water basin on the table, he immediately understood and pointed at it, not knowing what to do. Shopkeeper Han, thank you for your bargaining. Xiaohua didn't even turn his head. He waved his hand and took out 10 spirit stones. He placed them on the table and said with a smile, however, the fisherman also worked hard. If I could give him more, I would give him more. This is I's reward for you. This little cabbage I wanted. Thank you, Immortal Elder. Seeing so many spirit stones on the table, how could Han Jiang have any complaints? His hands trembled as he put the spirit stones into his clothes and said excitedly, What was the original name of the little cabbage? What was the name of the scholar surnamed Yu? Shue Shue looked at the fish and asked in a low voice, This Chang Yulian hesitated. Shopkeeper Han said loudly, "This little brother knows that the little cabbage in the story is surnamed Huang, but I don't know his name. The scholar surnamed Yu is called Yu Zhongquan." Is there a grave for these two at the bank of the cold river? Shue Shue asked again. Grave? Shopkeeper Han was stunned. Then he smiled and said, "Female immortal, this is just a legend. How can there be a tomb? It's impossible for people to pay homage to them. Even if there is a tomb, I'm afraid it's still under the control of that cultivation family." Xiaohua reminded. Shue Shue was disappointed. Actually, this little cabbage still needs to be eaten. Only by eating it can the two immortals look good together. Shopkeeper Han didn't forget to remind them. Shue Shue glared at Han Jiang, scaring him into shrinking his neck. Unfortunately, he was too fat, and his neck was full of wrinkles. No matter how hard he tried, he couldn't shrink his neck. Haha, Xiaohua chuckled. Just as he was about to speak, a strand of divine scent swept across the air. It swept past everyone and landed on the basin. Great! A loud and clear voice sounded. I have come to this cold river more than 10 times, and I've never met a little cabbage. Today is my lucky day. Xiaohua slightly frowned. He looked up and saw a male and a female cultivator flying over from the air. The two looked very intimate. The female cultivator was at the peak of the aura refining realm. She was fair and plump, as if she was sticking to the cultivator's body. The male cultivator was at the middle stage of the foundation building realm. He had dark skin and a thick beard that covered more than half of his face. Moreover, the beard was thick and long, as if it was pricked on his face. Greetings, Senior. Chang Lihao and the others were dumbfounded. They hurriedly stood up and bowed deeply. Shue Shue didn't dare to be negligent. She stood up and bowed like Chang Yulian. Xiaohua squinted his eyes and raised his hand. Greetings, fellow Taoist. That cultivator didn't think it was strange. He smiled and said, I have been paying attention to this little cabbage for more than 10 years. Today, I finally see it. I wonder if fellow Taoist is willing to give it to me? Sorry, I want to keep it for myself. Xiaohua didn't seem to hesitate and immediately replied. Oh, that cultivator was slightly surprised, and the smile on his face disappeared in an instant. Husband. At this time, the female cultivator held the male cultivator's arm and said, I've heard about the freshness of this little cabbage, but I've never tasted it. Moreover, if you and I eat this little cabbage together, won't we be together forever? As she spoke, the female cultivator's face flushed. Wife, don't be anxious. Let me discuss it with this fellow Taoist. I'm sure this fellow Taoist will tactfully give it to me, that male cultivator said with a smile. The generous actions of these two people not only made Chang Yulian and Chang Shuimei's ears turn red, but even Shue Shue's face turned red. After all, she and Xiaohua were intimate in front of others. When did they show it in front of others? Fellow Taoist, please. That male cultivator cupped his hands and said, I'm Shang Chung from the 10,000 Poisons sect. This is my wife, Mei Xiaoyao from the Immortal Poison sect. How should I address you? 10,000 Poisons sect. Hearing this, Xiaohua's face immediately turned cold. After thinking for a moment, he returned the greeting and said, I'm Xiaohua from the Imperial Thunder sect. This is my junior sister Shue Shue. Xiaohua originally wanted to call Shue Shue wife, but after seeing Mei Xiaoyao from the Immortal Poison sect being so licentious, Shangcheng also called her wife. Since he and Shue Shue didn't dual cultivate, if he also called her wife, wouldn't it be the same as them? Therefore, he changed the way he addressed her and called her junior sister. Hearing Xiaohua call her junior sister, Shue Shue sweetly smiled at Xiaohua. She clearly understood what Xiaohua was thinking. Imperial Thunder Sect? Shangcheng was surprised. He didn't expect to meet a disciple of the Imperial Thunder Sect in this remote place. The 10,000 Poison Sect was far from being comparable to the Imperial Thunder Sect. Although his cultivation was much higher than Xiaohua's, he didn't dare to bully the weak with his spear. That fellow Taoist Xiao. Shangcheng thought for a moment and said tactfully, no matter what price fellow Taoist Xiao used to buy this thing, I'll compensate you with 10 times the price. Would fellow Taoist Xiao consider it? No need. Xiaohua didn't even need to look at Shue's somewhat worried and apprehensive expression. He very decisively refused. Husband, Mei Xiaoyao's tone was unusually gentle. Her voice seemed to reach Shangcheng's bones, making him very happy. This lowly concubine hopes to be together with my husband forever. Yesterday, I just made a wish, and today, I encountered this rare lucky thing in the cold river. Isn't this the favor the heavens gave us? As she spoke, her eyes flowed with 10,000 kinds of emotions. It was indescribably moving. However, the bashful expression on her face made her seem very young and inexperienced. Not to mention Chang Liqiang and the others, even Xiaohua swallowed a mouthful of saliva and secretly said, if Shue's like this, but immediately, the Buddha's Saraira in Xiaohua's mind faintly flashed with golden light. A wave of coolness emerged and Xiaohua immediately became clear-headed. Io, this immortal poison sect really has some skills. Xiaohua immediately realized that this might be one of Mei Xiaoyao's techniques. Sure enough, Shangcheng used all his strength to hug Mei Xiaoyao. He turned his head towards Xiaohua and said, fellow Taoist Xiao, name a price. As long as I can take it out, I'll definitely satisfy you. Xiaohua smiled. He raised his right hand, extended his index finger, and slightly waved it. He said, this is my junior sister's beloved item. Even if all the treasures in the world are precious, they can't compare. Xiaohua. Shue's sweet smile was really pure as a cabbage in the water. Fellow Taoist Xiao, are you not giving me face? Shangcheng's expression was slightly cold. He faintly released the pressure of a middle-stage foundation establishment cultivator, causing the wind in the cold river house to slightly move. What is face? I don't see any face in the cold river house. Xiaohua simply didn't care about him. He didn't even release his pressure and only calmly said, ha ha ha. Shangcheng pushed his hand, pushing Mei Xiaoyao to the side. I'm giving face to the thunder-controlling sect, but I'm not giving face to a pretty boy like you. Since you don't know what face is, I'll teach you what face is on behalf of your master from the thunder-controlling sect. After he said that, he clapped his hands. A hook that looked like a full moon flew out. It streaked across the air in a pitch-black arc and hovered above Shangcheng's head. The hook was about a foot long, and both its inner and outer layers were sharp blades. These blades weren't as shiny as normal swords, but they were pitch-black. If one's divine sense slightly swept over it, they would be able to sense the gloomy coldness inside. Needless to say, it was definitely dipped in poison. Huh. Seeing Shangcheng take out his magic tool, the Chang family siblings were greatly alarmed. They both retreated simultaneously, appearing very terrified. This was a fight between foundation-building cultivators. It wasn't something aura-refining cultivators like them could approach. Xiaohua slightly frowned. He moved his divine sense and saw that the entire fourth floor of the cold river house was emitting a faint brilliance. There was actually a restriction protecting it. Presumably, Han Jiang was afraid that cultivators would attack and destroy the cold river house, so he asked someone to set it up. Junior Marshal Sister, wait here for a moment, Xiaohua said to Shui with a smile. Be careful, Senior Marshal Brother. Shui clapped her hands and took out the butterfly orchid. She activated her magic power and first protected her body. Only then did she say with a sweet smile. Although she said, be careful, there was only lingering concern in her tone. Fellow Taoist Shang is indeed formidable, daring to teach me a lesson on behalf of my master from the thunder-controlling sect. This young master wants to see what kind of ability you have. Xiaohua took a step forward and flew out of the cold river house, standing in midair. Quickly look, the immortals are fighting. Xiaohua's figure had just appeared in midair when a crowd of secular people shouted. Hee, as expected, newborn calves aren't afraid of tigers. Shangcheng sneered, and his figure also flew out of the cold river house. A little brat who just recently entered the foundation building realm actually dares to challenge me. If I don't teach you a lesson, you won't know how to write the word respect. Go. Shangcheng pointed his finger and activated his magic power. The crescent-shaped hook flashed through the air and charged towards Xiaohua. -8. Chapter 1921. Xiaohua sneered and clapped his hands. With a wong-wong sound, the cloud-suppressing seal flew out. At this moment, the cloud-suppressing seal was different from before. As soon as the cloud-suppressing seal flew into the air, it immediately glowed with a bronze brilliance. The surrounding spiritual energy of heaven and earth rushed in like a swarm of bees, creating a small breeze. As the spiritual energy poured in, the cloud-suppressing seal's brilliance flourished. That brilliance was like a sharp sword, about a foot long. The most important thing was that the beast head on the cloud-suppressing seal was originally incomplete and simply not worth mentioning. However, at this moment, under the stimulation of Xiaohua's transcendence energy, there was actually a faint shadow of it, appearing abnormally vivid. Magic weapon? Seeing the might of the cloud-suppressing seal, Shangcheng's expression immediately changed. However, at this moment, his magic weapon had already rushed in front of Xiaohua. How could he sheathe his blade? Attack! Xiaohua clapped his hands. The cloud-suppressing seal, which had already become 3 feet long, faintly moved. A dazzling yellow cloud fell from the cloud-suppressing seal, covering the curved hook with incomparable speed. With a schwa sound, the curved hook streaked across the cloud. Listening to the sound, it sounded like it fell on silk. However, when Shangcheng's divine sense swept over, he already sensed that his magic weapon seemed to have fallen into a swamp. The cloud-suppressing seal's poison and sharpness were both useless against it. Moreover, Shangcheng was a middle-stage foundation establishment cultivator. How could he not know how to use magic weapons? Previously, he was still somewhat lucky, hoping that Xiaohua's transcendence energy was not enough to activate this shabby magic weapon. However, seeing the magic weapon's appearance, he immediately knew that Xiaohua had already completed the sacrificial refining of the cloud-suppressing seal. Even if his magic weapon could defeat Xiaohua, it would not be as easy as he previously thought. What should I do? Shangcheng's thoughts rapidly turned. As for Xiaohua, he looked at the cloud-suppressing seal in the air with interest. This magic weapon was his first magic weapon, and he used it the most. When he was in the aura refining stage, he had used it a lot. However, it wasn't until he reached the foundation establishment stage that he had a feeling that this cloud-suppressing seal could follow his thoughts and do anything. Roar! Xiaohua let out a long roar and grabbed the air with his hand. The cloud-suppressing seal buzzed as if it was responding to Xiaohua. Soon after, the cloud-suppressing seal started to emit a faint light. This was the condensation of the world's spiritual energy. It then gradually expanded until it was 2 meters in size. Only then did it stop. A kind of calmness and a kind of thickness came from the cloud-suppressing seal. Hiss! Shangcheng sucked in a breath of cold air and looked at Xiaohua again. To be able to use a magic weapon to such a level, this transcendence energy definitely did not belong to a cultivator who had just entered the foundation establishment stage. Even if there was a difference between him and Xiaohua, the difference was still visible. Imperial Thunder Sect, as expected of a great sect. Haha, Shangcheng waved his hand and put away his magic weapon. He laughed. With fellow Taoist Zhao's cultivation, you really are a disciple of a great sect. You really make me envious. Alas, that day, I also went to the Thunderclap Peak to become a disciple. Unfortunately, my physique did not meet the requirements. Otherwise, I might have already become fellow Taoist Zhao's senior martial brother. Seeing Shangcheng put away his magic weapon and land on top of the cold river house, Xiaohua's face turned cold. He snorted and pointed at the cloud-suppressing seal. The cloud-suppressing seal turned into a ball of light and landed on his hand. It also landed on top of the house. What? Fellow Taoist Shang, didn't you want to teach me a lesson on behalf of my master? Xiaohua did not have any good feelings towards the 10,000 Poison sect. He sneered. What is the meaning of landing on top of the house? Could it be that you want to use my junior martial sister to threaten me? Shangcheng naturally had this intention, but how could he say it out loud? Seeing Xiaohua being so impolite, his smile froze and he unhappily said, I didn't fight with you because I respect your Imperial Thunder sect. I'm not afraid of you. As for using your junior martial sister to threaten you, do you think I can't kill you? Hee. Xiaohua knew the power of the butterfly orchid. He was not afraid of Shangcheng doing something dirty. He only laughed and ignored him. Husband. Mei Xiaoyao's eyes were still filled with reluctance. She looked at the water basin in front of Xue Xue. Wife. Shang Cheng frowned, indicating for her not to speak. The Chang siblings seemed to have not recovered from their shock. They stared blankly at Xiao Hua. They had never met a cultivator who could challenge a cultivator above their level and win without a fight. They were filled with longing. As for the fat shopkeeper Han Jiang, he was very knowledgeable. He quickly smiled apologetically and said, "We are all immortals. Naturally, harmony is the most important thing. Senior Immortal, this humble restaurant has many delicious wines and delicacies. They are the best at cheap prices. If Senior Immortal doesn't mind, please sit here. This little one will go and get them for Senior Immortal." After saying that, shopkeeper Han quickly invited Shang Cheng to sit at another table. This was also shopkeeper Han's carelessness. Perhaps it was his fate. Xiao Hua did not sit in the middle because he was magnanimous. He did not compete with an aura-refining junior. How could Shang Cheng have that kind of bearing? Not to mention, he had just been forced to stop by Xiao Hua. He had nowhere to put his face. When he heard this, he sneered, "Do you think you can arrange where I sit? How can your ordinary wine and delicacies enter my mouth? You really deserve to die." After saying that, he unexpectedly waved his sleeve and cupped his hands towards Xiao Hua. "Fellow Taoist Xiao, I will take my leave now. We will meet again someday." When Xiao Hua heard Shang Cheng's words, he felt that something was wrong. Seeing Shang Cheng wave his sleeve, he hurriedly stood in front of Xue Xue. But at this moment, Han Jiang's face suddenly turned black. The black strands were like small snakes that rapidly slithered down. Han Jiang only had time to raise his hand. Even his eyes were filled with resentment. Immediately, he bled from his 7 orifices and fell down the stairs. When he looked at Shang Cheng again, it was as if nothing had happened. It was as if he had swatted a fly. He grabbed Mei Xiaoyao's slender waist and flew up, about to throw her into the air. Hee, just as Shang Cheng and Mei Xiaoyao's figures flew out of Cold River House, Xiao Hua's cold laughter sounded behind them. "Fellow Taoist Shang, you don't have to leave." What does fellow Taoist Xiao mean? Shang Cheng did not dare to be negligent. He clapped his hands, and the magic treasure scarlet blood hook flew out again. "You hurt someone in front of me, and you still want to leave?" Xiao Hua glanced at the scarlet blood hook and said coldly, "If I don't kill you, how can I face shopkeeper Han?" "Ah?" Shang Cheng was stunned. He asked in astonishment, Just for that fatty who is worse than a pig or a dog. You want to fight with me?" "It's not a fight. It's a kill." Xiao Hua coldly released the cloud-suppressing seal. "Shopkeeper Han is your descendant?" Shang Cheng suddenly thought of something, and his expression changed slightly. "No, today is the first time I've seen shopkeeper Han. Ha ha ha, since he's not related to you. Fellow Taoist Xiao, are you joking?" Shang Cheng laughed loudly. "Although you have some divine abilities, you're only at the early stage of foundation establishment. How could you know the secret technique of the middle stage of foundation establishment? Don't let your emotions affect your decisions just because of a damaged magic treasure. You're too righteous." Although shopkeeper Han is a worldly person, he's still a person. Since you can kill people, you should have the resolve to be killed by others. Xiao Hua was still cold. "I'm not talented, but I want to be the person who kills you. I want to be a person who's too righteous." -8. You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.